Hello, dear friends. So glad you could join us at Potter Paradox. Today's narrative adventure is titled What If Harry Found a Dragon Egg Under the Cupboard at age 6. We put our heart into every story we share. If you appreciate our work, showing some love with a like and subscribe would make our day. The story begins now. Chapter 1, The Egg Under the Stairs. Harry Potter was having a particularly rubbish day, even by his standards. And that was saying something. Boy! Get in here and clean this mess. Uncle Vernon's voice thundered through the house, making the windows rattle. 6-year-old Harry scurried into the kitchen, where Dudley had apparently decided that his cereal would look better on the walls than in his bowl. His cousin sat there with a smug grin, chocolate milk dripping from his chin. But I didn't, Harry started. Now. Vernon roared, his mustache quivering dangerously. Harry grabbed a cloth and started wiping down the splattered walls. His stomach growled loudly enough for everyone to hear. He hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch, a half slice of bread and some cold beans. Hungry, Potter? Dudley snickered. Maybe if you weren't such a freak, you'd get breakfast too. Harry ignored him, focusing on cleaning. He'd learned that responding only made things worse. Besides, weird stuff did happen around him. Just last week, his teacher's hair had turned blue when she'd yelled at him for something Dudley had done. Harry couldn't explain it, but somehow it always seemed to be his fault. After finishing the kitchen, Harry was shoved outside to weed the garden under the blazing summer sun. His knees ached as he yanked stubborn dandelions from Aunt Petunia's flower beds. 4 hours later, sunburnt and dizzy from hunger, he was finally allowed back inside. Don't touch anything, Petunia warned as he walked through the spotless living room. And stay in your cupboard until dinner. Harry nodded and trudged to his bedroom, the cupboard under the stairs. As the door clicked shut behind him, he collapsed onto his thin mattress. His stomach twisted with hunger, but at least in here, he could have a moment's peace. Something glinted in the dim light filtering through the cupboard's vents. Harry squinted, noticing an unusual shadow in the farthest corner where the stairs met the floor. Curious, he crawled toward it. Tucked in a crack between the floorboards was something round and shimmering. Harry carefully reached out, expecting it to be a forgotten marble or maybe one of Dudley's toys. Instead, his fingers touched something warm and surprisingly smooth. What the? He whispered, carefully extracting the object. It was an egg. At least, he thought it was an egg, but like no egg he'd ever seen before. About the size of his fist, it had a pearly surface that shifted colors in the dim light, deep crimson one moment, burnished gold the next. Faint patterns that looked like flames or maybe scales swirled across its surface. How did you get here? Harry murmured, cradling it in his palms. The egg pulsed with warmth, almost like it was answering him. Harry nearly dropped it in surprise. You're alive, he gasped, then quickly lowered his voice, glancing nervously at the cupboard door. If the Dursleys found out he had, whatever this was, they'd take it away for sure. Harry quickly fashioned a nest for the egg using his one spare shirt, tucking it into the corner where he'd found it. The egg seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, casting a comforting light in his tiny space. I'll take care of you, Harry promised, not knowing why he felt so protective of this strange object. Whatever you are. That night, Harry slept better than he had in months, despite his empty stomach. He dreamt of flying high above the clouds, free and powerful. The egg became Harry's secret. Every morning before school, he'd check on it, marveling at how it seemed warmer some days than others. After particularly bad days, like when Dudley and his gang played Harry hunting or when Aunt Petunia cut his hair brutally short only for it to grow back overnight, the egg would glow more intensely, as if responding to his emotions. I had the dream again, Harry whispered to the egg one night, 3 weeks after finding it. The green light and someone screaming. Aunt Petunia says it's the car crash that killed my parents, but it doesn't feel like a car crash. The egg pulsed with a gentle light, almost like a heartbeat. You understand me, don't you? Harry said, smiling sadly. Wish you could talk back. Harry began sneaking food to his cupboard, not for himself, but for whatever might eventually hatch. He wasn't sure what kind of animal laid colorful, warm eggs, but he figured it would be hungry when it emerged. Stole some bacon this morning, Harry told the egg, pulling a napkin-wrapped bundle from his pocket. Not sure if you'll like bacon, but everyone likes bacon, right? The egg remained silent but glowed a bit brighter. One afternoon, Harry returned from school to find Aunt Petunia waiting with a broom in hand. The cupboard needs cleaning, she announced, eyeing him suspiciously. Dudley says he heard noises. Harry's heart nearly stopped. Noises? Scratching. Tapping. Her thin lips pressed together. If you've brought vermin into this house, no. Harry said quickly. I'll clean it right away. Probably just, the house settling. Petunia didn't look convinced but shoved the broom into his hands. Everything out. Then vacuum. Then you can put your things back. Harry worked frantically, managing to slide the egg into his school backpack before emptying the cupboard. He vacuumed meticulously, all while feeling the comforting warmth of the egg through the canvas of his bag. That night, Harry kept the egg beside him on his pillow. It seemed to have developed tiny cracks along its surface. Are you coming out soon? Harry whispered, stroking the shell with a gentle finger. The egg trembled slightly in response. Whenever you're ready. I'll protect you. 3 days later, everything changed. Dudley's birthday arrived with the usual mountain of presents and a planned trip to the zoo. Mrs. Figg, the cat-smelling old lady who normally watched Harry during Dursley outings, had broken her leg, which meant Harry was supposed to go along. He'll ruin everything. Dudley had wailed dramatically. Vernon pulled Harry aside, massive finger jabbing into Harry's chest. You listen here, boy. One funny business, one tiny abnormal thing, and you'll be locked in that cupboard until Christmas. Understood? Yes, Uncle Vernon, Harry replied, keeping his expression neutral while his mind raced. The egg had been moving more in the past day, the cracks widening. Whatever was inside seemed ready to hatch, and Harry couldn't bear the thought of being away when it happened. At breakfast, Harry deliberately spilled orange juice on Dudley's new trainers. The result was spectacular. Dudley howled like he'd been stabbed, Vernon turned purple, and Petunia nearly fainted at the sight of the stained leather. You! Vernon bellowed, grabbing Harry by the collar. Cupboard. Now! Harry tried to look disappointed as Vernon practically threw him into the cupboard, slamming the door with enough force to send dust raining from the stairs above. No meals for 2 days. Vernon shouted through the door as the locks clicked into place. Harry waited until he heard the car pull out of the driveway before turning to his backpack. He pulled out the egg, which was now rocking gently back and forth. The cracks had spread across the entire surface, and a faint chirping sound came from inside. Hello? Harry whispered, heart pounding. Are you coming out now? The egg rocked more vigorously. Harry cradled it in his lap, uncertain what to do. Should he help? Would that hurt whatever was inside? A piece of shell suddenly popped free, and a tiny, clawed foot emerged, glistening with fluid. The foot scratched at the shell, widening the hole. A second foot appeared, followed by what looked like the point of a wing. Harry watched, transfixed, as more of the shell fell away. Finally, with a determined chirp and a final push, the creature tumbled free onto Harry's lap. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't a lizard. It was something Harry had only seen in storybooks. A dragon. Tiny, no bigger than a kitten, with scales that shifted from ruby red to burnished gold, just like the egg had done. It had delicate, bat-like wings, currently stuck to its damp body, and a slender tail that ended in a spade-shaped tip. Its head was elegantly shaped with 2 small horns and enormous eyes that blinked up at Harry, intelligent eyes the color of liquid amber. You're a dragon, Harry breathed, hardly daring to believe it. The creature chirped again and tried to stand on wobbly legs. It fell forward, butting its head against Harry's hand. A strange sensation washed over Harry, warmth, trust, hunger, feelings that somehow weren't his own. Harry gasped. "Are you, in my head?" The dragon chirped again, and Harry felt another wave of sensation, affirmation, connection. "This is impossible," Harry whispered, even as he carefully stroked the dragon's damp scales. The creature leaned into his touch, emitting a sound like a purr. Hunger rippled through their connection again, more insistent this time. "Food." "Right," Harry said, reaching for his stash. He'd smuggled in bread, some cold chicken, and a bottle of water. Unsure what dragons ate, he offered a piece of chicken first. The tiny dragon sniffed it cautiously, then snatched it with surprising speed, swallowing it whole. It chirped demandingly for more. "Slow down," Harry laughed, tearing smaller pieces. "You'll choke." The dragon devoured everything Harry offered, then curled up in his lap, radiating contentment. Harry felt the connection between them strengthening, like an invisible thread binding them together. "You need a name," Harry said, stroking its warm scales. The dragon's eyes were already drooping with sleep. "Something that fits you." The dragon's scales glimmered in the dim light, reminding Harry of the embers in the school fireplace during winter. "Ember," Harry decided. "Your name is Ember." The dragon, Ember, chirped softly in approval before drifting to sleep. Harry leaned back against the wall of his cupboard, cradling his impossible new friend. For the first time in his life, he felt truly not alone. When the Dursleys returned from the zoo, Harry had already hidden Ember in the makeshift nest. Vernon unlocked the cupboard long enough to shove in a piece of bread and a glass of water before locking it again. "Ungrateful brat," he muttered through the grate. As soon as Vernon's heavy footsteps retreated, Ember poked his head out from the nest, chirping indignantly. "Shoo," Harry cautioned, but couldn't help smiling. "They can't know about you. They'd take you away." Fear and protectiveness surged through their connection, but surprisingly, it wasn't coming from Harry. Ember was afraid for him. "It's okay," Harry soothed, stroking Ember's head. "I'm used to them." Ember wasn't convinced. The tiny dragon crawled onto Harry's lap and stretched his wings, now dry and surprisingly strong-looking. They spanned about 8 inches from tip to tip, delicate membranes supported by slender bones. "Can you fly?" Harry wondered aloud. Ember flapped experimentally, managing to hover a few inches above Harry's knees before dropping back down. Pride radiated from the little creature. "That's brilliant," Harry whispered excitedly. For the next 2 days, Harry and Ember developed their routine. Harry would hide Ember whenever the cupboard was opened, and Ember would practice flying in the limited space when they were alone. The dragon grew noticeably each day, already the size of a large rat by the 3rd day. Harry discovered that Ember preferred meat but would eat almost anything if hungry enough. He also learned that the dragon was far more intelligent than any animal he'd ever encountered. Ember seemed to understand everything Harry said, and their emotional connection deepened until Harry could sense not just feelings but simple thoughts and images from his companion. The most startling discovery came on the 4th day after Ember's hatching. Dudley, bored with his birthday presents already, decided to torment Harry by banging on the cupboard door and shouting insults. "Freak! Weirdo! Bet your parents killed themselves to get away from you." Harry tried to ignore him, but each word stung. Ember sensed his distress and growled, a surprisingly loud sound for such a small creature. "What was that?" Dudley demanded, suddenly quiet. "Have you got an animal in there?" Harry's blood ran cold. "No. Go away, Dudley." The cupboard door rattled as Dudley tried the handle. "Dad! Dad! The freak's got an animal in his cupboard." Vernon's thundering footsteps approached. Harry grabbed Ember and looked frantically for a hiding place, but there was nowhere in the tiny space that wouldn't be immediately visible when the door opened. "I'll protect you," Harry whispered desperately to Ember, clutching the dragon to his chest. As Vernon unlocked the door, Harry felt something strange, a surge of energy flowing from Ember into him, warm and powerful. It spread through Harry's body like electricity. The door flew open, and Vernon's massive frame blocked the light. "What have you done now, boy?" he demanded, reaching in to grab Harry. Without thinking, Harry threw up his hand in a defensive gesture. "Stop!" A wave of energy burst from Harry's palm, not quite visible, but unmistakably real. It slammed into Vernon, throwing him backward into the hallway wall with enough force to knock down a picture frame. Vernon sat on the floor, dazed and gasping. Petunia screamed from the kitchen doorway. Dudley froze on the stairs, his mouth hanging open. Harry stared at his own hand in shock, feeling Ember's satisfaction flowing through their connection. "You!" Vernon wheezed, his face changing from red to white. "What did you do, you freak?" For the first time, Harry saw fear in his uncle's eyes, raw, unmistakable fear. The man who had tormented him for years was afraid of him. Harry stood up, Ember concealed behind his back. "Don't call me that again," he said, his voice steadier than he'd ever heard it. "And don't come in my cupboard." Vernon struggled to his feet, keeping his distance. "This is my house, boy." "You don't give orders, Vernon," Petunia interrupted, her voice trembling. Vernon, his eyes. Harry couldn't see himself, but he could feel it, something was different. The energy from Ember still coursed through him, and based on the Dursleys' expressions, it was visible somehow. Just stay in there, then," Vernon muttered, backing away. "Stay until you're normal again." The cupboard door closed, but notably, it wasn't locked. Harry turned to Ember, who was preening proudly on his pillow. "What did you do?" Images flashed in Harry's mind, Ember sharing energy, amplifying something already inside Harry. Magic. It was magic. "I can do magic," Harry whispered, looking at his hands. "And you made it stronger?" Ember chirped in confirmation, head held high. Harry laughed softly, a new feeling spreading through him, power, yes, but more importantly, hope. For the first time, the Dursleys couldn't hurt him. For the first time, he had a friend. "We're going to be okay," Harry told Ember, stroking the warm scales. "Together." The incident marked a turning point at number 4, Privet Drive. The Dursleys still clearly hated Harry, but now they were afraid to show it too openly. Dudley no longer chased Harry around the house. Vernon's threats became muttered rather than shouted. Petunia still assigned endless chores but flinched when Harry moved too quickly. Harry didn't abuse this new power dynamic, he simply wanted to be left alone. And for the most part, he was. This gave him more time with Ember, who continued to grow at an astonishing rate. By the end of the second week, the dragon was the size of a small cat, with wings that spanned nearly 2 feet. The cupboard was becoming cramped, and Harry knew they needed a better solution. "We need somewhere for you to stretch your wings," Harry told Ember one night. "Maybe the shed in the back garden. We could sneak out there when everyone's asleep." Ember sent an image of soaring through clouds, followed by a feeling of longing so intense it made Harry's chest ache. "I know you want to fly properly," Harry sighed, scratching under Ember's chin. "But we have to be careful. If anyone sees you." Harry had been sneaking books about dragons from the school library, but they all described dragons as mythical creatures. If Ember was real, and he definitely was, then what did that mean? Were there others like him? Other people who could do magic? A knock at the front door interrupted Harry's thoughts. It was unusual for anyone to visit the Dursleys after dinner. Harry cracked open his cupboard door and peered out. Vernon was answering the door, his voice shifting from irritated to artificially cheerful when he recognized the visitor. "Mrs. Figg." What a surprise. "Good evening, Mr. Dursley," came the familiar voice of Harry's occasional babysitter. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I was just wondering if I might borrow young Harry for an hour or so." My new cat is quite skittish, and Harry has always had such a way with animals. Vernon hesitated. The boy is indisposed. Punishment for misbehavior. Oh, surely you could make an exception. I'd be ever so grateful. Perhaps I could return the favor by watching him during your next family outing. The prospect of free babysitting won Vernon over. Fine. Boy. Get out here. Harry quickly instructed Ember to stay hidden and slipped out of the cupboard. Yes, Uncle Vernon. Mrs. Figg needs help with her cat. Be back in an hour or there'll be consequences. Harry nodded, confused but glad for an excuse to get outside. He followed Mrs. Figg down the garden path. As they walked toward Wisteria Walk, Harry noticed Mrs. Figg seemed different. She walked straighter, and her usual rambling about her cats was absent. Mrs. Figg? Is everything okay? The old woman glanced around before speaking in a much crisper voice than Harry had ever heard from her. Something's changed at that house, hasn't it, Harry? Harry tensed. What do you mean? I've been watching that family for years, making sure they didn't. She stopped herself. The energy around the house has shifted. I felt it 3 days ago, a surge of wild magic. Untrained but powerful. Harry stopped walking. You know about magic? Mrs. Figg's eyes widened. So it was you. I suspected as much, given your parentage, but you're awfully young for accidental magic of that magnitude. My parentage? Harry repeated, his mind reeling. You knew my parents? Mrs. Figg looked uncomfortable. Not personally, no. But I knew of them. Lily and James Potter were quite famous in certain circles. Famous? Harry's head was spinning. They weren't drunks who died in a car crash. Car crash. Mrs. Figg looked outraged. Those wretched muggles told you your parents died in a car crash. Of all the disrespectful, muggles. Mrs. Figg sighed heavily. I've said too much already. I'm not supposed to tell you any of this until you're older. But something's happened, hasn't it? Something that's accelerated things. Harry thought of Ember, currently hidden in his cupboard. Should he trust Mrs. Figg with his secret? She clearly knew about magic, but that didn't mean she'd approve of him keeping a dragon. I can't say, Harry replied cautiously. Mrs. Figg studied him. You're different, Harry. More confident. The magic I sensed was protective in nature, but powerful enough to trigger monitoring charms. People might come investigating. What people? The Ministry. Magical government. She waved a hand dismissively. They generally ignore accidental magic from children, but if it continues or grows stronger. Harry's stomach nodded with worry. If these Ministry people came looking, they might find Ember. What would happen if they came? They'd likely modify your relatives' memories and warn you to be more careful. But if they found the source of the unusual magic? She trailed off, looking at Harry speculatively. Harry decided to test the waters. Mrs. Figg, what do you know about magical creatures? Her eyebrows shot up. Magical creatures? Why do you? She stopped, eyes widening. Harry Potter, what have you done? I haven't done anything. Harry protested. I just found, he caught himself. Mrs. Figg grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong for an old woman. Listen to me very carefully. If you found something not normal, you must tell me immediately. Some magical creatures are extremely dangerous, even those that seem harmless when young. Harry hesitated. Mrs. Figg clearly knew about the magical world, but would she report Ember to these Ministry people? Can I trust you? He asked bluntly. Mrs. Figg looked taken aback, then her expression softened. You're very much like your mother, direct when it matters. Yes, Harry. You can trust me. I was placed in this neighborhood to watch over you, though I was instructed to maintain distance. Placed. By whom? By Albus Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of our age. He wanted to ensure your safety after your parents' deaths. Harry had 1,000 questions, but one burned brightest. If you were supposed to watch over me, why did you never help when the Dursleys, when they were cruel to me? Pain and guilt flashed across Mrs. Figg's face. I had strict instructions not to interfere unless your life was in danger. The blood protection from your mother's sacrifice. She stopped again. I'm telling you too much. But I did report every mistreatment to Dumbledore. He insisted the protection of your mother's blood outweighed the unpleasantness of your situation. Harry wasn't sure how to feel about this revelation. Protection from what? And who was this Dumbledore to decide he should suffer the Dursleys' abuse? What I found, Harry said slowly, is my friend. My only friend. And I won't let anyone take him away. Mrs. Figg's expression grew concerned. Harry, what exactly did you find? Before Harry could answer, a piercing cry echoed through the night, a cry Harry recognized instantly. Ember. Harry sprinted back toward Privet Drive, Mrs. Figg calling after him. The distress flooding through his connection with Ember was overwhelming, fear, pain, anger. He rounded the corner to see the front door of number 4 standing open, light spilling onto the lawn. Dudley stood in the doorway, face ashen. What did you do? Harry demanded, shoving past him. I just wanted to see what you were hiding, Dudley whimpered. Dad tried to grab it and it breathed fire. Harry raced inside to find chaos. The hallway wall was scorched black. Vernon was holding his arm under the kitchen tap, cursing violently. Petunia was on the phone, her voice hysterical. Yes, police. There's a dangerous animal in our house. It attacked my husband. No. Harry shouted, lunging for the phone. Petunia shrieked and backed away. You. Vernon bellowed, his burnt arm forgotten as rage overtook pain. You brought that monster into our home. Ember's cry came again, from the living room. Harry dashed in to find his dragon cornered behind the sofa, wings spread defensively. Though still small, Ember's jaws were open, revealing sharp teeth and a glow of heat at the back of his throat. It's okay, Harry said soothingly, approaching with his hands outstretched. I'm here now. Ember's posture relaxed slightly, but his eyes remained fixed on the doorway where Vernon now stood, clutching a fire poker. Get away from it, boy, Vernon growled. The police are coming to destroy that thing. Rage unlike anything Harry had ever felt surged through him. You will not touch him. The same energy from before, the magic, crackled around Harry's hands. This time, however, it wasn't invisible, actual sparks of golden light danced between his fingers. Vernon faltered, the poker lowering slightly. Harry, Mrs. Figg's voice came from behind Vernon. She'd followed him back to the house. When she spotted Ember, she gasped. Is that? Great Merlin, that's a dragon. He's my friend, Harry said firmly, moving to stand between Ember and the adults. And no one is going to hurt him. Mrs. Figg pushed past a stunned Vernon. Harry, dragons are class XXXXX creatures, the most dangerous classification in the wizarding world. They're nearly impossible to domesticate. Ember's different, Harry insisted. We're connected. He understands me, and I understand him. As if to prove the point, Ember chirped softly and moved to Harry's side, wings folding neatly against his growing body. The dragon's tail curled protectively around Harry's leg. Mrs. Figg's eyes widened further. A familiar bond? With a dragon? That's unprecedented. Vernon seemed to recover his voice. I don't care what it is. It's destroyed my home and burned my arm. The police will be here any minute. Oh, do be quiet, Dursley, Mrs. Figg snapped with surprising authority. The Muggle police can't help you with a magical creature. I've already sent an emergency signal to the proper authorities. What authorities? Petunia asked, her voice shrill with fear as she appeared behind Vernon. A sudden crack like a gunshot made everyone jump. A tall, severe-looking woman in dark robes appeared in the middle of the Dursleys' living room, seemingly out of thin air. Petunia screamed and Vernon cursed. Arabella, the woman addressed Mrs. Figg sharply, your message said there was an emergency involving the Potter boy. Indeed, Minerva, Mrs. Figg replied. As you can see, we have a rather unusual situation. The woman, Minerva, turned to look at Harry, then froze when she spotted Ember. Her hand moved to her pocket, drawing out a polished wooden stick that Harry somehow knew was a wand. Mr. Potter, she said calmly, though her eyes betrayed her shock, I need you to step away from that dragon very slowly. No, Harry replied, equally calm. He won't hurt me. We're bonded. Minerva exchanged a startled glance with Mrs. Figg. Bonded? That's not possible with wild dragons. See for yourself, Harry said. He placed a hand on Ember's head, and the dragon immediately leaned into his touch, purring loudly. The witch lowered her wand slightly, her stern expression giving way to fascination. In all my years. How did you come by a dragon egg, Mr. Potter? I found it under the stairs, in my cupboard. Your cupboard? Minerva's eyes narrowed, shifting to the Dursleys, who shrank back. My bedroom, Harry explained matter-of-factly. The cupboard under the stairs is where I sleep. Minerva's lips thinned to almost nothing. I see. The two words carried volumes of cold fury. And when exactly did you find this egg? About 3 weeks ago. Ember hatched 4 days ago. Ember? A ghost of a smile touched the witch's lips. A fitting name for a fire-breather. Another loud crack announced the arrival of a second witch, this one younger with spiky purple hair. Watcher, Professor McGonagall. Got your emergency signal and, bloody hell, is that a dragon? Language, Miss Tonks, McGonagall admonished. Yes, it seems young Mr. Potter has formed an unprecedented familiar bond with a dragon hatchling. Tonks whistled. That's wild. Wait till the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures hears about this. They're gonna flip. Harry stepped forward, determination in every line of his small body. They can't take Ember away from me. I won't let them. McGonagall's expression softened as she looked at the defiant 6-year-old. Mr. Potter, I understand your attachment, but dragons require specialized care. They grow rapidly and become extremely dangerous. I can take care of him, Harry insisted. I've been reading books about dragons and, the sound of sirens interrupted him. The Muggle police were approaching. McGonagall sighed. Miss Tonks, please deal with the Muggle authorities. Standard Memory Modification Protocol. Arabella, help her with an appropriate cover story. On it, Professor. Tonks said cheerfully, her hair changing from purple to a professional brown as she headed for the door. Now, McGonagall continued, turning to the Dursleys, I believe we need to have a serious discussion about Mr. Potter's living arrangements. Vernon, recovered from his initial shock, puffed up indignantly. Now see here. We never asked for the boy. He was dumped on our doorstep with nothing but a letter. McGonagall's nostrils flared dangerously. A letter from Albus Dumbledore requesting you treat your nephew as your own son. A request you have clearly ignored. We gave him a roof over his head. Petunia snapped. Fed him. Clothed him. And this is how he repays us, bringing dangerous creatures into our home. A cupboard, McGonagall said quietly, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. You gave Lily and James Potter's son a cupboard to sleep in. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Harry, still standing protectively beside Ember, watched in fascination as the formidable witch advanced on his relatives. I warned Albus, McGonagall continued. I sat outside this house for an entire day before Harry was placed here. I told him you were the worst sort of muggles imaginable. But he insisted the blood protection was paramount. Blood protection? Harry asked. McGonagall turned to him, her expression softening again. Your mother's sacrifice created a powerful protective charm. As long as you can call home a place where her blood dwells, your aunt's home, a certain protection extends to you. Protected from what? Harry asked. From those who would do you harm, McGonagall replied carefully. There are dark wizards in our world, Mr. Potter. Your parents had enemies. Harry absorbed this information, stroking Ember's scales thoughtfully. The dragon nudged his hand, sending comfort through their bond. So I have to stay here. With them? McGonagall's lips pressed into a thin line again. The protection is important, but clearly arrangements must be modified. I had no idea conditions were this deplorable. She waved her wand, and a silver cat burst from the tip, streaking through the wall and vanishing. A message to Professor Dumbledore, she explained, seeing Harry's amazed expression. In the meantime, something must be done about your dragon. Harry tensed again, and Ember growled low in his throat. Peace, Mr. Potter, McGonagall raised a placating hand. I'm not suggesting separation. The bond you formed is clearly genuine and, frankly, miraculous. But a dragon cannot live in a Muggle neighborhood. The risks are too great. Then where? Harry asked. Before McGonagall could answer, a third crack announced yet another arrival. This time, an elderly man with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles appeared. He wore magnificent purple robes spangled with silver stars. Ah, Minerva, he said pleasantly, as though arriving in a suburban living room via teleportation was perfectly normal. Your message suggested an urgent situation involving young Harry. His twinkling blue eyes found Harry, then widened slightly at the sight of Ember. Well, he said softly, this is unexpected. The next few hours passed in a blur for Harry. The police were sent away, convinced that a kitchen fire had been contained with no injuries. The Dursleys were firmly instructed to remain in the kitchen while the wizards, for that's what they were, actual wizards, discussed Harry's situation in the living room. Harry learned more about his history and the magical world in those hours than in his entire life. His parents hadn't died in a car crash but were murdered by a dark wizard called Voldemort, a name that made everyone except Dumbledore flinch. Harry himself had somehow survived the killing curse, leaving him with the lightning scar on his forehead and temporarily defeating Voldemort. He was famous in the wizarding world, the boy who lived, they called him. The idea made Harry distinctly uncomfortable. Dumbledore, who introduced himself as the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, examined the bond between Harry and Ember with fascination. Most remarkable, he murmured, after performing several spells that created colorful lights around both Harry and the dragon. The magical resonance is perfect. I've never seen such synchronicity between a wizard and a magical creature, especially one as naturally resistant to bonding as a dragon. What kind of dragon is he? Harry asked. Ember had curled up in his lap, apparently unconcerned by the powerful wizards surrounding them. That, Dumbledore said, is perhaps the most extraordinary aspect. Unless I'm very much mistaken, your Ember is an Imperial Skydancer, a species believed extinct for at least 3 centuries. Extinct? Harry looked down at his friend with new wonder. But how did his egg end up in my cupboard? An excellent question, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Magic often finds a way to restore balance. You, Harry, were in desperate need of a protector, a friend. And young Ember's species has always been drawn to powerful wizards in times of great change. Is that why we can communicate? I can feel what he's feeling, and sometimes see images he's thinking. The Imperial Skydancers were renowned for their intelligence and empathic abilities, McGonagall explained. Historical accounts suggest they could form deep telepathic bonds with their chosen wizards. But such accounts were considered largely mythical until now. Tonks, who had been watching with undisguised fascination, piped up. So what happens now? The Ministry's gonna have kittens when they hear about this. Dragons are restricted beasts, there are about 17 laws against keeping them as pets. Ember isn't a pet, Harry said firmly. He's my friend. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. Indeed. And I believe this bond may fall under much older magical law, the law of familiar bonding, which predates the Ministry itself. By those ancient statutes, a familiar bond cannot be severed without grave consequences to both beings. So they can't take him away? Harry asked hopefully. Not legally, no, Dumbledore confirmed. But that still leaves us with the practical problem of where and how to raise a dragon that will soon be too large for any normal dwelling. A solution was eventually reached. Harry would remain with the Dursleys due to the blood protection, but his living conditions would be dramatically improved. The second bedroom would become his, and magical monitoring would ensure he was treated properly. Ember would stay in a magically expanded and protected space that Dumbledore would create in the back garden, disguised from Muggle eyes as a tool shed. Most importantly, Harry would receive regular visits from a wizard tutor to help him control his magic and understand his unusual bond with Ember. The tutor will also bring proper food for a growing dragon, McGonagall added. Dragons require a specialized diet, particularly magical ones. By dawn, the arrangements were complete. The Dursleys, thoroughly intimidated by Dumbledore's quiet but unmistakable power, agreed to everything. Dudley's second bedroom was cleared of broken toys and transformed into a proper living space for Harry. The garden shed became a magically expanded habitat for Ember, with enough room for the dragon to grow and even fly short distances within the enchanted space. Before the wizards departed, Dumbledore took Harry aside for a private word. Your bond with Ember is both a gift and a responsibility, Harry, he said gently. In time, as you both grow, you will face challenges. There are those in our world who would seek to exploit such a rare dragon for their own purposes. Harry's arms tightened protectively around Ember, who was dozing against his chest. I'll protect him. I believe you will, Dumbledore smiled. And he will protect you. That is the nature of true friendship. After everyone had gone, Harry carried a sleepy Ember to his new magical habitat. The inside was astonishing, a vast space with rocky outcroppings, a small pool of water, and enough height for proper flying practice. The temperature was perfectly warm, and various enchantments ensured Ember's comfort and safety. What do you think? Harry asked, setting Ember down on a flat stone. The dragon yawned, stretching his wings to their full span, then sent Harry a feeling of profound contentment and gratitude. Yeah, Harry agreed, sitting down beside his friend and looking around at their new beginning. I feel the same way. In just a few extraordinary days, Harry's world had completely transformed. He wasn't alone anymore. He had Ember. He had magic. And for the first time in his life, he had hope. As if reading his thoughts, Ember nudged Harry's hand affectionately, sending a clear message through their bond, together. Together, Harry agreed, smiling. Always. Chapter 2, Secrets and Fire. Harry sprinted through the woods behind Magnolia Crescent, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't running from something, for once in his life, but toward something. Someone. His best friend was waiting. Sorry I'm late. Harry called out as he reached the disguised entrance to Ember's expanded habitat. At 8 years old, Harry had grown taller and stronger, though still small for his age thanks to years of Dursley neglect. His wild black hair whipped around his face as he glanced over his shoulder, making sure no one had followed. A series of impatient feelings pulsed through their bond before Harry even opened the enchanted door: excitement, hunger, and a touch of annoyance. I know, Harry laughed, slipping inside and activating the magical locks with a wave of his hand, one of the wandless tricks he'd been practicing. Dudley's gang was hanging around the park. Had to take the long way. The interior of what appeared to be a shabby garden shed from the outside was now a massive cavern-like space. Smooth stone walls rose to a ceiling nearly 30 feet high, enchanted to show a realistic sky that matched the time of day. Rocky outcroppings, a deep pool of crystal-clear water, and several massive logs created a dragon paradise. And in the center, stretching luxuriously, was Ember. In 2 years, Harry's tiny hatchling had transformed into a magnificent creature the size of a small horse. His scales still shifted between ruby and gold depending on his mood, but now they gleamed with an almost metallic luster. His wingspan had reached an impressive 15 feet, and his elegant head was crowned with horns that curved gracefully backward. Amber eyes, intelligent and mischievous, fixed on Harry. "You promised flying today," Ember's voice resonated directly in Harry's mind. Their telepathic communication had developed from simple emotions and images into full sentences over the past year. Professor McGonagall, who visited monthly to check on their progress, called it unprecedented at every opportunity. "And we will fly," Harry promised, dropping his backpack and pulling out a package wrapped in butcher paper. "But food first. Mrs. Talbot at the butcher's shop gave me extra lamb hearts today." Ember's eyes dilated with pleasure. The good human. She should get shiny things. Harry laughed. Ember had developed a very dragon-like appreciation for shiny things, and believed they made appropriate gifts for anyone who provided food or kindness. "I'll pass that along," Harry said, unwrapping the meat. "How was your day? Any visitors?" "The bird-cat woman came," Ember reported, referring to Professor McGonagall's animagus form. "She brought another wizard. Old. Smells of smoke and honey." Harry frowned. "McGonagall brought someone else. Did they see you?" "Yes. The smoke man looked at my wings for a long time. Said something about extraordinary control of the fire membrane. Probably a dragonologist," Harry mused, watching Ember devour the lamb hearts. "McGonagall mentioned bringing a specialist to check your growth. Did you like him?" Ember swished his tail thoughtfully. "He was respectful. Didn't try to touch without permission. Brought dragon treats from Romania." "Then he's all right in my book," Harry declared, settling onto one of the flat rocks. "So, about that flying." Ember's head snapped up, all attention focused on Harry. "You mean it? Outside flying?" Harry nodded solemnly. "I've been scouting the woods past the old Miller property. There's a clearing surrounded by really tall trees. If we go at dusk, with your coloring against the sunset." He grinned. "Anyone who spots us will think they're seeing things." Excitement surged through their bond, so intense it made Harry's fingertips tingle. Ember had been confined to flying circles within the enchanted habitat for months. Though the space was magically expanded, it couldn't compare to open sky. "When?" Ember asked, practically vibrating with anticipation. "Right now," Harry said, checking his watch. "Sun sets in about an hour. If we cut through the ravine, we can make it to the clearing in 20 minutes. Ember lowered his body in invitation. "Climb on, little wizard. We walk until the trees open." The sun hung low in the sky, painting the clouds in fiery oranges and reds that matched Ember's scales perfectly. Harry and Ember crouched at the edge of the woods, surveying the clearing. It was perfect, nearly a quarter-mile across with no buildings or roads visible. The tall oaks and elms surrounding it would hide them from casual observers, and the timing meant minimal risk of hikers or picnickers. "Remember," Harry whispered, though he could have communicated silently through their bond, "no higher than the treetops on this first run. We're just testing things out." "I remember," Ember replied, though Harry felt his friend's impatience. "But my wings need stretching, Harry. They ache from disuse." "I know, buddy. Just being careful." Harry climbed onto Ember's back, positioning himself just behind the dragon's powerful shoulders where the scales formed a natural saddle-like depression. They'd practiced this positioning countless times in the habitat. Harry took a deep breath, excitement and nerves battling in his stomach. This would be their first real flight, the realization of countless dreams they'd shared through their bond. "Ready?" he asked, gripping the specially designed leather handholds McGonagall had crafted for him. Ember's answer wasn't words but pure emotion, joy, anticipation, freedom. With a powerful thrust of his hind legs, the dragon launched forward into the clearing. Powerful wings extended, catching the evening air as they pumped downward in perfect synchronization. The ground fell away. Harry's stomach dropped, then soared as Ember gained height with each wing beat. The rush of wind tore at Harry's clothes and hair, bringing tears to his eyes, or maybe that was the sheer exhilaration of flight. Harry! Ember's mental voice rang with unrestrained delight. This is what we were made for. Harry couldn't have agreed more. The sensation was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, better than any dream or fantasy. They were flying, actually flying, man and dragon united in defiance of gravity. Ember banked left, then right, testing his maneuverability. Each move was fluid, instinctive, as if he'd been born knowing exactly how to navigate the currents of air. Harry moved with him, leaning into turns, adjusting his weight as needed. True to their agreement, Ember kept below the tree-line, skimming across the clearing in wide, swooping arcs. Even with this limitation, the flight was glorious. More? Ember asked hopefully as they completed their third circuit of the clearing. Just one more loop, Harry promised, checking the darkening sky. It'll be proper night soon, and we need to get back before anyone notices we're gone. Ember banked into a final turn, wings extended to their full span as he glided effortlessly through the cooling air. Harry closed his eyes for a moment, committing every sensation to memory, the rhythmic breathing of the massive creature beneath him, the wind on his face, the perfect freedom. Harry, Ember's voice cut through his reverie, suddenly tense. Someone is watching. Harry's eyes snapped open, scanning the edge of the clearing. At first, he saw nothing in the growing twilight. Then, a flicker of movement near a large oak, a figure in dark clothes, partially hidden. Land in the trees on the opposite side, Harry directed, ducking low against Ember's neck to reduce visibility. Quickly but smoothly. Don't look like we're panicking. Ember complied, gliding toward the far edge of the clearing and dropping into the tree cover with remarkable precision for a creature his size. His claws dug into the soft earth as he folded his wings. Human? He questioned, turning his head to scent the air. I think so, Harry whispered, sliding from Ember's back and crouching behind his foreleg. Could you tell anything about them? Not pray fear, Ember reported, which was their shorthand for normal human reactions to seeing a dragon. More like predator interest. That wasn't good. A normal person would be terrified, disbelieving, or both upon seeing a boy riding a dragon. Someone who showed interested observation suggested magical knowledge. We need to circle back to your habitat, Harry decided. Stay in the trees, move quietly. They began picking their way through the woods, Ember moving with surprising stealth for a creature his size. Years of magical growth had made him more agile and aware than a normal dragon, according to McGonagall's expert. They'd covered perhaps 100 yards when a silver light flashed through the trees ahead. Magic, Ember warned, stopping abruptly. Harry nodded. Someone's casting spells. He reached into his pocket, feeling for the smooth river stone McGonagall had enchanted for him, an emergency port key that would transport both him and Ember to safety if activated. Be ready to run if I say so. Before they could retreat, a voice called out softly from the trees. Hello, young rider. No need for alarm. I've been hoping to meet you. The voice belonged to a woman, cultured, with a slight accent Harry couldn't place. She stepped into view, illuminated by a small glowing orb hovering above her palm. She appeared to be in her 40s, with long silver-streaked black hair and sharp features. She wore dark green robes that blended with the forest and carried no visible wand. Who are you? Harry demanded, staying close to Ember's protective bulk. He kept his hand on the portkey stone, ready to activate it. The woman stopped a respectful distance away. My name is Alara Nightshade. I'm a wand maker, or was, before my exile. And you are Harry Potter, unless I'm very mistaken. Her eyes flickered to Harry's forehead, where his scar was visible beneath his unruly hair. Harry tensed. How do you know my name? Elara smiled slightly. Everyone in the wizarding world knows your name, young man. Though most would be surprised to see you bonded to an Imperial Skydancer. Remarkable creature. She inclined her head toward Ember in a gesture of respect. She has wand wood in her pockets, Ember communicated to Harry. Many kinds. And something else, old magic. Not dangerous to us, I think. What do you want? Harry asked, slightly reassured by Ember's assessment but still wary. To offer my assistance, Elara replied simply. I've been living in these woods for nearly a year, sensing unusual magical activity. Once I realized it was you, and your magnificent friend, I've been trying to find a way to approach you. Are you working for the Ministry? Harry had learned enough from McGonagall to be cautious of official magical interference. Elara laughed, a surprisingly warm sound. Hardly. The Ministry and I had a rather permanent falling out some years ago. No, I'm here of my own accord, drawn to the unique magic you two are generating. She gestured around them, and Harry realized the forest seemed to be responding to her presence. Leaves rustled without wind, and small blue lights, like fireflies but clearly magical, began dancing around the clearing. This entire area is becoming a magical nexus because of your bond, Elara explained. It's quite extraordinary. The local woodland is transforming, developing properties not seen in Muggle Britain for centuries. Harry exchanged a glance with Ember. McGonagall had mentioned something similar, that their combined magical signature was unusually powerful and might affect the surrounding environment. So what exactly are you offering? Harry asked. Training, Elara said simply. I sense great power in you, Harry Potter, but little control. Minerva McGonagall is an excellent witch, but her monthly visits can only teach you so much. I can help you harness your abilities without relying on a wand, just as I do. To demonstrate, she raised her hand. The hovering light expanded, splitting into dozens of smaller orbs that danced in complex patterns before reshaping into a glowing miniature of Ember. Harry couldn't help but be impressed. McGonagall always used her wand for magic. Ask her about dragon magic, Ember suggested. The bird-cat woman knows little about our kind. Do you know about dragons? Harry relayed. About Imperial Skydancer specifically? Something flickered across Elara's face, excitement, perhaps. More than most. Before my exile, I specialized in crafting wands with magical creature components. I've studied historical texts about the Imperial Skydancers extensively. They were thought extinct for centuries, which makes your friend here a miracle. She took a step closer, then stopped when Ember tensed. My apologies. May I? She gestured toward Ember, asking permission to approach. Harry looked to Ember, who considered the request, then nodded his great head once. Carefully, he told Harry. I will allow examination but not touching. You can come closer, but please don't try to touch him without asking, Harry translated, though he suspected Elara understood the dragon's body language perfectly well. Elara approached slowly, her movements respectful and deliberate. She circled Ember, studying his wings, tail, and head with the keen eye of a scholar. Extraordinary, she murmured. The fire membrane beneath his scales is already fully developed. And those secondary gill-like structures beneath his jaw, those are flame modulators. According to the ancient texts, mature Imperial Skydancers could control their fire with unprecedented precision, even creating flame that could heal rather than harm. Ember preened slightly under the educated appreciation, extending one wing to better display the translucent membrane that stretched between his wing fingers. How do you know so much about a species that's supposed to be extinct? Harry asked, curiosity beginning to override caution. Elara's expression turned solemn. Because the extinction of the Imperial Skydancers wasn't natural. They were hunted to oblivion by dark wizards who coveted their magical properties. I've spent years researching extinct magical species, trying to understand what we've lost. She looked directly at Ember. To find one alive in this age. It changes everything. I like her knowledge, Ember commented to Harry. But be careful of her interest. Humans have always wanted dragon parts. Are you planning to study Ember? Harry asked directly. Because he's not a specimen. Study, yes. Harm, never, Elara replied firmly. What I offer is knowledge exchange. I can teach you about your dragon's heritage and abilities, things you might never learn otherwise. In return, I simply wish to observe your bond and perhaps, if you both permit, document this miracle for future generations. It was tempting. McGonagall had been helpful but admitted she knew little about the rarer dragon species. And Harry was hungry for any knowledge about Ember's kind. We need to think about it, Harry said after a moment. This is a lot to take in. Elara nodded, stepping back. Of course. Caution is wise in these times. She reached into a pocket and withdrew what appeared to be a smooth piece of bark with symbols carved into it. If you wish to speak further, simply burn this with dragon fire. It will guide me to a meeting place of your choosing. She placed the bark on a fallen log, then backed away. One final thing, Harry Potter. Be careful who you trust with knowledge of your dragon. There are those in the wizarding world who would go to great lengths to possess an imperial skydancer. The Malfoys, for instance, have been asking questions in nearby villages. Unusual magical activity draws attention, not all of it benign. With that cryptic warning, Elara waved her hand, extinguishing her magical lights. In the sudden darkness, Harry heard soft footsteps retreating, then silence. Interesting human, Ember commented after a moment. Very, Harry agreed, retrieving the bark token. What do you think? Should we trust her? Ember rumbled thoughtfully. Not yet. But her knowledge could be valuable. My thoughts exactly, Harry said, climbing back onto Ember's back. Let's head home. We've had enough excitement for one night. As Ember carried him through the darkened forest, Harry couldn't help feeling that their peaceful existence had just become considerably more complicated. The next morning found Harry back in the normal world, or the Muggle world, as wizards called it. Privet Drive hadn't changed much in 2 years, despite the dramatic changes in Harry's life. The houses were still identical, the lawns still meticulously maintained, and the neighbors still blissfully unaware that magic existed. The Dursleys, however, had changed considerably. After Dumbledore's intervention, they'd developed a wary respect for Harry that bordered on fear. They didn't shower him with affection, Harry doubted they were capable of that, but they no longer starved or mistreated him. Dudley's bullying had ceased entirely after an incident where Harry had accidentally made all his cousin's hair fall out during a particularly nasty episode of Harry hunting. Harry sat at the breakfast table, mechanically eating toast while his mind wandered to Elara Nightshade and her warnings. The Malfoys. McGonagall had mentioned that name before, usually with a tight-lipped expression of disapproval. Boy! Vernon's voice interrupted his thoughts. Are you listening? Harry looked up, blinking. Sorry, Uncle Vernon. What did you say? Vernon's mustache twitched irritably. I said we're having company tonight. Business associates. You'll need to be invisible. Though the Dursleys now gave Harry his own room and adequate food, they still preferred to pretend he didn't exist when company visited. That's fine, Harry replied, hiding his relief. An evening away from Privet Drive meant more time with Ember. I'll make myself scarce after school. Vernon nodded stiffly and returned to his newspaper. That was another change, conversations rather than orders, however reluctant. After breakfast, Harry headed to school, his mind still on Elara and her offer. The local primary school had become marginally more bearable since the Dursleys' reformation. Dudley's gang left Harry alone, and without constant hunger and exhaustion plaguing him, Harry's grades had improved dramatically. Teachers who had once viewed him as troubled now described him as quiet but bright. During lunch break, Harry sat alone under his favorite tree, mentally conversing with Ember, who was back in his habitat. "Do you think we should contact Alara?" Harry asked through their bond. The telepathic link worked over distances now, though it grew weaker the farther apart they were. "I've been thinking about it," Ember replied. His mental voice was always deeper and more resonant than his actual vocalizations. "Her knowledge of my kind seems genuine. And you need more training than the bird-cat woman provides." Harry smiled at Ember's nickname for McGonagall. "She said the Malfoys were asking questions." "That sounds bad." "All humans ask questions about dragons," Ember observed. "The important thing is why they ask." A shadow fell across Harry, interrupting his internal conversation. He looked up to see his mathematics teacher, Mr. Bennet, looking down at him with concern. "Everything all right, Harry?" "You were miles away." Harry quickly smiled. "Just daydreaming, sir." Mr. Bennet sat down beside him on the bench. "You know, you've got quite a gift for numbers. Have you ever thought about where that might take you in the future?" Harry almost laughed. His future was already mapped out, Hogwarts at 11, learning to be a wizard. But he could hardly explain that. "Not really, sir. I'm still figuring things out." "Well, you should. Minds like yours don't come along often." Mr. Bennet stood, brushing off his trousers. "There's a mathematics competition next month. I'd like to enter you, if that's all right." "I'd have to ask my aunt and uncle," Harry said automatically, though he doubted the Dursleys would care either way. "Do that," Mr. Bennet nodded. "You could go far, Harry Potter. Remember that." As the teacher walked away, Harry felt a familiar pang. His double life was becoming increasingly complicated. Part of him belonged in this world, with normal concerns like math competitions and homework. Another part belonged with Ember, with magic and wonder and danger. "The human is right about one thing," Ember commented, having observed the conversation through Harry's eyes. "You could go far. Farther than any of them imagine." Harry smiled, drawing comfort from his friend's confidence. "Let's meet this Alara tonight. I want to know more about the Malfoys and why they're sniffing around." "Agreed," Ember replied. "Bring meat. I'm hungry." Some things never changed, dragon or not. That evening, with the Dursleys entertaining their business guests, Harry slipped into the woods with his backpack full of butcher scraps and the bark token Alara had given him. He made his way to Ember's habitat, his footsteps nearly silent after years of practice moving unnoticed. Ember was waiting, eyes gleaming in the dim light of the enchanted ceiling. "Did you bring the fire-calling wood?" he asked immediately. Harry pulled out the bark token. "Right here." "Are you sure about this?" "No," Ember admitted. "But knowledge is power, and we need power to stay safe." It was hard to argue with dragon logic. Harry held out the token. "Would you do the honors?" Ember lowered his massive head until his snout was level with Harry's hand. His nostrils flared, and Harry felt heat building in the dragon's chest through their bond. A moment later, a precisely controlled jet of flame, no larger than a candle's, shot from between Ember's teeth, igniting the bark. Instead of burning to ash, the token flared with blue-green fire, then rose from Harry's palm and hovered in the air. It spun slowly, then shot toward the door of the habitat, leaving a trail of sparks. "I guess we follow it," Harry suggested. Together, they exited the habitat, Ember ducking his head to fit through the doorway. Outside, twilight had fallen, painting the woods in deep shadows. The burning token darted between trees, leading them deeper into the forest than Harry had ever ventured before. After 15 minutes of increasingly dense woodland, the token suddenly flared brighter and dropped to the ground, burning away to nothing. Harry and Ember found themselves in a small clearing dominated by an enormous oak tree. Its trunk was easily 15 feet across, and its branches created a natural canopy overhead. "Welcome," Elara's voice called from within the tree itself. To Harry's astonishment, a section of the trunk swung open like a door, revealing a warm light within. Elara stepped out, wearing simpler robes than before, her silver-streaked hair braided down her back. "You decided to come," she observed with a slight smile. "Both of you. I'm honored." Ember snorted softly, sending a puff of smoke into the air. "Ask her about this place. It smells of old magic." "What is this place?" Harry asked. "Is this tree your home?" Elara nodded, gesturing toward the open trunk. "My humble dwelling. But more importantly, this oak marks the center of what once was a magical grove, a natural gathering place for magical beings before wizards built their hidden villages and schools." She waved her hand, and soft lights appeared among the branches overhead, illuminating the clearing. Harry noticed for the first time that other trees around them bore similar, if smaller, doors and windows. A hidden community, Harry realized. "Are there other wizards living here?" "Not wizards," Elara corrected. "Other magical beings, those who prefer separation from both Muggle and wizarding societies. We've established something of a sanctuary here." As if on cue, a tiny humanoid figure with gossamer wings peeked out from a hollow in a nearby tree, then quickly ducked back inside when it noticed Harry looking. "Was that a wood sprite?" "Yes," Elara confirmed. "We also have a small colony of bowtruckles, a family of forest nymphs, and various other creatures seeking refuge." Ember lowered his head, scenting the air curiously. "Many different magics here. Hidden well. Good hiding place." "Please, come inside," Elara invited. "My home is enchanted to accommodate visitors of all sizes." Harry hesitated, still wary despite his curiosity. "Before we do, I want to know more about you. Why were you exiled from the wizarding world? And why are you so interested in us?" Elara's expression turned solemn. Direct questions deserve direct answers. She sat on a gnarled root that curved up from the ground like a natural bench. "I was a wand maker for 23 years, trained by my father, who was trained by Gregorovich himself. I specialized in experimental cores, seeking alternatives to the standard phoenix feather, dragon heartstring, and unicorn hair." She paused, her fingers tracing patterns in the air that left faint golden trails. "My research led me to believe that wands could be crafted to amplify specific magical aptitudes by using cores from more unusual magical creatures. The Ministry disapproved. They claimed my methods encouraged the hunting of protected species, though I only ever used materials ethically sourced from creatures who had died naturally." "So they exiled you for making different wands?" Harry frowned. "That seems extreme." "Politics was the real reason," Elara said, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. "My research threatened certain powerful families who control the wand-making industry. The Malfoys, in particular, have significant investments in traditional wand-making materials." "Malfoys again," Ember noted. "Ask her what they want with us." "You mentioned the Malfoys were asking questions locally," Harry said. "What kind of questions? And why would they care about us?" Elara's expression darkened. "Lucius Malfoy has been visiting villages within 50 miles of Little Whinging, inquiring about unusual magical disturbances. His public reason is ministry business, but Lucius hasn't worked for the ministry in years, not officially." She leaned forward, her voice dropping despite the isolation of their location. "What you must understand, Harry, is that Imperial Skydancers weren't just rare dragons, they were magical catalysts. Their scales, freely given, could amplify spells beyond normal limits. Their fire could forge enchanted metals no normal flame could melt. And their blood." She trailed off, glancing apologetically at Ember. "Historical accounts suggest their blood had properties similar to phoenix tears, but with the power to revive those on the very brink of death, not merely heal injuries." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "And you think Malfoy knows this? That he's looking for Ember?" I think he suspects something valuable has emerged in this area, Elara replied carefully. Whether he knows exactly what it is remains unclear. But Lucius Malfoy was a known supporter of you-know-who during the war, despite claiming to be under the Imperius curse. If he's taking a personal interest in magical disturbances near the boy who lived. She didn't need to finish the thought. Harry understood the implication. I am not afraid of this Malfoy human, Ember declared, stretching to his full height. Let him come. I will show him dragon fire. It's not that simple, Harry said aloud, forgetting in his worry that Elara couldn't hear Ember's mental voice. If he's as powerful and connected as she says, he won't come alone. Elara raised an eyebrow. You can hear him directly. The telepathic bond has progressed that far. Harry nodded. For about a year now. Started with feelings and images, then words. Remarkable, Elara whispered. The text suggested such bonds were possible but took decades to develop. She studied them both with newfound respect. You two are rewriting magical history simply by existing. Tell her we need more than history lessons, Ember prompted. We need to know how to defend ourselves. Harry relayed the message, and Elara nodded gravely. Defense is precisely what I wish to teach you, among other things. She rose from her seat, gesturing toward her tree home. Please, come inside. I have materials to show you, books and scrolls about Imperial Skydancers that might help you understand Ember's developing abilities. And I can begin teaching you wandless magic techniques that will serve you well in emergencies. Harry exchanged a glance with Ember, who gave a slight nod. We go in, but remain alert, the dragon advised. Trust must be earned. Together, they followed Elara through the door in the massive oak tree. Inside, Harry gasped in astonishment. What should have been the narrow confines of a tree trunk was instead a spacious, circular room with a high, domed ceiling. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books, scrolls, and jars containing various magical substances. A spiral staircase wound upward along one side, leading to what appeared to be additional floors. Most impressively, the room was easily large enough to accommodate Ember's bulk, with a recessed area near one wall that resembled the stone resting platforms in his habitat. Welcome to my home, Elara said simply. One of the advantages of being an unconventional witch is developing unconventional living arrangements. She moved to a large table in the center of the room, covered with ancient-looking scrolls and open books. I've prepared some materials I thought might interest you both. This, she indicated a scroll with faded golden edges, is a 6th century account of Imperial Skydancer behaviors and abilities, written by a Welsh druid who bonded with one. Harry approached the table cautiously, fascinated despite his lingering suspicion. The scroll was written in symbols he couldn't read, but the illustrations were breathtaking, detailed drawings of dragons in flight, breathing different colored flames, and interacting with robed figures. Ember moved to look over Harry's shoulder, his warm breath ruffling the boy's hair. Ask her to read it, he requested, his mental voice tinged with eagerness. I want to know about my ancestors. For the next 2 hours, Elara translated ancient texts about Imperial Skydancers, revealing information that left both Harry and Ember astonished. According to the scrolls, mature members of Ember's species could produce different types of flame, each with unique properties: healing, light generation, metal forging, and traditional destruction, manipulate weather patterns within a limited area, sense magical disturbances over great distances, form telepathic bonds with wizards of complementary magical signatures, live for up to 500 years, growing throughout their lives. The most remarkable account, Elara said, carefully unrolling a delicate parchment protected by preservation charms, suggests that the most powerful Imperial Skydancers could temporarily share their magic with their bonded wizards, creating a combined magical entity of extraordinary power. Share magic? Harry repeated. You mean like when Ember helped me push Uncle Vernon away that time? Elara looked up sharply. You've experienced this already? Direct magical sharing? Harry explained what had happened 2 years ago when Vernon had threatened to discover Ember. As he spoke, Elara's expression shifted from surprise to deep interest. That's precisely what this text describes, but it claims such abilities typically manifested after decades of bonding. She studied them both intently. Your connection defies all historical precedent. We are special, Ember commented smugly, preening his scales. Harry laughed, relaying the dragon's sentiment to Elara, who smiled in response. Indeed you are, she agreed. Which is why proper training is essential. She moved to another shelf, retrieving a slender wooden box. Have you been taught any formal magic beyond what Professor McGonagall shows you during her visits? Harry shook his head. Just basic control exercises and theory. She says I'll learn properly at Hogwarts when I'm 11. A waste of precious time, Elara muttered. Traditional wizarding education is bound by arbitrary age restrictions that ignore individual potential. She opened the box, revealing what appeared to be a wand, but unlike any Harry had seen McGonagall use. Rather than polished wood, it seemed composed of twisted vines wrapped around a crystal core. This is not a traditional wand, Elara explained, seeing Harry's interest. It's what my people call a focus, a training tool for wandless magic. It helps channel your intent without creating dependence on a specific magical instrument. She held it out to Harry. Would you like to learn how to use it? Harry reached for the focus, then hesitated, glancing at Ember. What do you think? Knowledge is power, Ember repeated his earlier sentiment. And the bird-cat woman doesn't teach enough. Decision made, Harry accepted the twisted focus, feeling an immediate warmth spread through his fingers. Unlike the oppressive heat of strong emotion that triggered his accidental magic, this was a gentle, controlled sensation. Good, Elara nodded approvingly. It responds to you. Now, the first principle of wandless magic is understanding that the power comes from within you, not from any external tool. The focus merely helps you direct what's already there. For the next hour, Elara guided Harry through basic exercises, lighting the crystal tip of the focus, levitating small objects, and creating simple shields of magical energy. To Harry's surprise, he picked up the techniques quickly, as if his magic had been waiting for the opportunity to be properly channeled. Excellent progress, Elara praised as Harry successfully created a shield strong enough to deflect a rubber ball she tossed at him. You have a natural affinity for protective magic. Not surprising, given your history. Harry lowered the focus, suddenly curious about something that had been bothering him. Elara, what do you know about the night my parents died? About Voldemort? Elara flinched slightly at the name but recovered quickly. More than most, perhaps. Why do you ask? Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore tell me some things, but I always feel like they're holding back. Protecting me from something. Ember, who had been watching Harry's practice with interest, moved closer, sensing his friend's emotional shift. Elara considered Harry for a long moment before responding. They probably are. Albus Dumbledore, for all his wisdom, has a habit of withholding information he deems too burdensome. She set aside the training materials and gestured to a comfortable seating area near a cheerfully crackling fireplace that hadn't been visible when they entered. Sit, Harry. This conversation deserves proper attention. Once they were settled, Ember curled protectively around Harry's chair, Elara began speaking in a measured voice. The wizard who called himself Lord Voldemort was born Tom Riddle, a half-blood orphan not unlike yourself in circumstances, though very different in character. He discovered his magical abilities early and used them to hurt others even before attending Hogwarts. She proceeded to explain the rise of Voldemort, his gathering of followers called Death Eaters, and the reign of terror that had gripped the wizarding world for years. She spoke of the Order of the Phoenix, a resistance group led by Dumbledore, and how Harry's parents had been members. The official story, she continued, is that Voldemort targeted your family because they defied him 3 times. But there have always been whispers of another reason, a prophecy, perhaps, though its contents remain unknown to all but a select few. A prophecy about me? Harry asked, stunned. About either you or another boy born at the end of July that same year, Elara clarified. Neville Longbottom, whose parents were also Order members. Harry tried to process this information. So Voldemort tried to kill me because of a prophecy. And instead, his curse rebounded and destroyed him. Not destroyed, Elara corrected grimly. That's where Dumbledore and I disagree with the Ministry's official position. There are certain types of magic, dark, terrible magic, that could potentially anchor a soul to this world even after the body's destruction. Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. You're saying he's still out there somewhere? Just, without a body? Elara nodded solemnly. I believe so, yes. As does Dumbledore, though he's careful about stating it publicly. And if Lucius Malfoy is becoming active again, seeking powerful magical creatures. She left the implication hanging in the air. They would use me to bring back their dark wizard, Ember concluded, a low growl rumbling in his chest. I would rather die than serve such a purpose. Harry placed a hand on Ember's scales, drawing comfort from their warm solidity. No one is using you for anything, he promised aloud. I won't let them. Elara watched their interaction with a mixture of sympathy and admiration. Your protective instincts go both ways. That's rare and precious. She leaned forward, her expression intense. Which is why I want to train you both, properly and thoroughly. Not just in magic, but in strategy, in history, in all the knowledge that might keep you safe in the coming years. You think something's coming? Harry asked. I know it is, Elara replied simply. The signs are there for those willing to see them. Strange disappearances in Albania. Ancient artifacts going missing from private collections. And now Lucius Malfoy, a man who only acts when he sees personal advantage, making inquiries about unusual magic near the boy who lived. She rose, moving to a chest in the corner of the room. From it, she withdrew a small, leather-bound book. This is a two-way journal, she explained, handing it to Harry. Write in it, and your words will appear in its twin, which I keep with me. If you ever need help or advice when we're not together, this will allow instant communication. Harry accepted the journal, touched by the gesture. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Elara said, her expression turning grim. The path ahead will not be easy for either of you. But with proper preparation, you can face whatever comes. As Harry and Ember left Elara's tree home later that night, the young wizard found himself both enlightened and burdened by new knowledge. The peaceful existence they'd carved out over the past 2 years suddenly seemed fragile, threatened by forces beyond their control. We will be ready, Ember assured him, sensing his concerns through their bond. Whatever comes, we face together. Harry nodded, drawing strength from his friend's confidence. Together, he agreed. Always. Over the next few months, Harry fell into a new routine. School during weekdays, visits with Ember every afternoon, and training sessions with Elara 3 times a week. The Wand-Maker proved to be a demanding but excellent teacher, pushing Harry to develop magical skills far beyond what McGonagall had taught him. They kept McGonagall informed about Elara's involvement, though not about everything they were learning. The Transfiguration professor was initially skeptical but became more accepting after meeting Elara and confirming she posed no threat to Harry or Ember. Ember, meanwhile, continued to grow both physically and magically. By Harry's 9th birthday in July, the dragon had reached the size of a small elephant, with a wingspan nearly 30 feet across. His control over his fire had developed remarkably, allowing him to produce everything from a candle-sized flame for precision tasks to roaring infernos that could melt stone. Their telepathic bond strengthened as well. Harry could now communicate with Ember across much greater distances, and they could share sensory experiences, Harry seeing through Ember's eyes during night flights, or Ember tasting food through Harry's mouth. The magical grove where Elara lived became their sanctuary, a place where Ember could fly freely under the protection of ancient enchantments that hid them from Muggle eyes. Harry met other magical beings who dwelled there, the shy wood sprites who eventually warmed to him, forest nymphs who taught him about magical plants, and a grumpy old centaur who occasionally shared cryptic observations about the stars. It was the most magical time of Harry's life, a period of growth and discovery untainted by the darkness Elara warned was coming. Until the day the Ministry found them. It began innocuously enough. Harry was at school, halfway through a history lesson, when a sharp spike of alarm shot through his bond with Ember. "Harry!" The dragon's mental voice was urgent. "Strange humans at the habitat. Ministry symbols on their clothes." Harry tensed in his seat. "How many? What are they doing?" "3 humans. Looking for me. Using detection devices. Hide magic failing." The hide magic was Elara's term for the concealment enchantments on Ember's habitat. "If they were failing." "I'm coming," Harry promised. "Stay hidden if you can. If not, fly to the grove." "Mr. Potter." His teacher's voice broke through his concentration. "Are you feeling unwell? You've gone quite pale." Harry seized the opportunity. "Actually, miss, I feel sick. May I go to the nurse?" The teacher frowned but nodded. "Very well. Take your things in case you need to go home." Harry didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his backpack and hurried from the classroom, breaking into a run the moment he was out of sight. Instead of heading to the nurse's office, he slipped out a side door and sprinted toward the woods. "Update?" he called to Ember. "They're inside the habitat now. I'm hiding in the woods behind it. They have strange devices, searching. Stay put. I'm almost there." Harry cut through gardens and hopped fences, taking every shortcut he knew. His lungs burned from exertion by the time he reached the edge of the woods that concealed Ember's habitat. He slowed to a cautious walk, approaching silently as Ember had taught him. Through the trees, he could make out 3 figures in official-looking robes moving around the exterior of what should have appeared to be an ordinary shed. One was waving what looked like a golden antenna, which emitted occasional sparks. Another consulted a complicated device that resembled a cross between a compass and a clock. "Definitely residual dragon magic," a woman's voice declared. "Strong signature, too. Not your standard Welsh green or Hebridean black." "Any idea where the creature is now?" asked a man with a deep, authoritative voice. "Close," the woman replied. "The magical residue is too fresh for it to have gone far. Probably hiding in these woods." Harry's heart raced. He needed to warn Elara, but there was no time. He had to lead them away from Ember. Taking a deep breath, Harry stepped deliberately on a fallen branch. The loud crack echoed through the quiet woods. All 3 ministry officials whirled toward the sound, wands at the ready. "Who's there?" the deep-voiced man demanded. Harry stepped into view, hands raised non-threateningly. "Hello. I'm Harry Potter. Is there a problem?" The reaction was immediate. The officials exchanged shocked glances, and the woman's detection device started beeping frantically when pointed at Harry. "Mr. Potter," the leader said, lowering his wand slightly. "I'm Walden McNair from the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. These are my colleagues, Mrs. Houndsby and Mr. Fletcher. We're investigating reports of an unregistered dragon in this area." Harry arranged his expression into one of innocent confusion. "A dragon? Like in fairy tales?" McNair's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "You know very well dragons are real, Mr. Potter. Your magical guardian is Minerva McGonagall, is she not?" "Yes, sir," Harry admitted, seeing no point in denying it. "She visits to teach me about magic sometimes." "Then you're aware of the wizarding world," McNair pressed. "And the laws regarding dangerous magical creatures?" Harry maintained his innocent act. "Professor McGonagall mentioned dragons are protected. Are you here to make sure one is safe?" Mrs. Houndsby stepped forward, her detection device still beeping. "The magical signature around you, Mr. Potter, you've been in close contact with a dragon recently." Harry thought fast. Professor McGonagall brought some dragon scales for a lesson last month. Could that be it? The officials exchanged skeptical glances. Mr. Fletcher, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. That wouldn't account for the intensity we're detecting. Mr. Potter, harboring an unregistered dragon is a serious offense, even for a child. If you know where it is, you should tell us now. Ember, where are you exactly? Harry asked through their bond. Half-mile east, in the Hollow Oak. They haven't found me yet. Relief flooded through Harry. Stay there. I'll handle this. To the ministry officials, Harry shrugged. I really don't know anything about a dragon. I just came to the woods to collect some leaves for a school project. He gestured to his backpack. We're studying different tree species. McNair didn't look convinced. Perhaps we should continue this discussion with Professor McGonagall present. Where is she now? At Hogwarts, I expect, Harry replied. She's not scheduled to visit until next week. Then we'll escort you home and contact her there, McNair decided. Your guardians should be informed of this investigation as well. This wasn't good. The Dursleys knew about Ember but had settled into a state of willful ignorance about the whole situation. Ministry officials appearing on their doorstep would disrupt the fragile peace Harry had established. That's really not necessary, Harry protested. I can just go home on my own and, I'm afraid I must insist, McNair cut him off, his tone hardening. Dragon smuggling is often connected to darker elements in the wizarding world. Your safety may be at risk if such individuals are operating in this area. The irony might have made Harry laugh under different circumstances. Instead, he found himself being escorted out of the woods by 3 ministry officials, their wands not quite pointed at him but definitely at the ready. As they walked, Harry frantically tried to think of a solution. He could use the emergency portkey McGonagall had given him, but that would only transport himself to safety, not resolve the situation. And if he disappeared, they'd definitely know he was hiding something. Elara, he called mentally, hoping the wandmaker might be monitoring for his presence as she sometimes did. Ministry officials are taking me to Privet Drive. They're looking for Ember. No response came. Either Elara was out of range or otherwise occupied. Harry, Ember's voice touched his mind. I can come. Burn them with fire. No. Harry replied firmly. That would only make things worse. Stay hidden. I'll find a way to deal with this. By the time they reached Privet Drive, Harry had formulated a shaky plan. It relied heavily on McGonagall's authority and the ministry's apparent respect for procedure. To his dismay, Uncle Vernon's car was in the driveway. He'd hoped his uncle would still be at work. Is this your residence? Mrs. Hounsby asked. Yes, Harry admitted reluctantly. My aunt and uncle's house. McNair strode confidently to the front door and knocked firmly. After a moment, Aunt Petunia answered, her expression shifting from polite inquiry to alarm when she saw Harry flanked by strangely dressed adults. Mrs. Dursley? McNair asked. We're from the Ministry of Magic. We need to speak with you regarding your nephew. Petunia went pale, her eyes darting nervously to the neighbors' houses. Come in, quickly, she hissed, practically dragging them inside. Once the door was closed, she rounded on Harry. What have you done now, boy? We had an agreement, no magical nonsense around normal people. Mrs. Dursley, McNair interrupted smoothly, I'm afraid there's been a potential violation of magical creature regulations in this area. We have reason to believe your nephew might have information about an unregistered dragon. Dragon? Vernon's voice boomed as he emerged from the living room, his face already reddening. What dragon? There are no ruddy dragons here. Not in the house, certainly, Fletcher muttered, glancing around the aggressively normal suburban interior. But somewhere nearby. We simply need to contact Minerva McGonagall, Mrs. Hounsby explained. She's Mr. Potter's magical guardian and should be present for any formal questioning. There will be no questioning in my house. Vernon bellowed, mustache quivering. We've tolerated the boy's abnormality as required, but we never agreed to turn our home into a freak convention. McNair's expression hardened. Mr. Dursley, I advise you to moderate your tone. We represent the lawful government of Wizarding Britain. Vernon looked like he might explode, but Petunia placed a restraining hand on his arm. Vernon, please. Let's just get this sorted quickly. While the adults argued, Harry slipped his hand into his pocket, feeling for the two-way journal Alara had given him. If he could just write a quick message. Mr. Potter, McNair's sharp voice caught him. What do you have there? Harry froze, caught in the act. Just a notebook, sir. May I see it? McNair extended his hand, clearly making a demand rather than a request. Harry reluctantly surrendered the journal. McNair flipped through it, finding only Harry's notes from school and drawings of dragons, nothing incriminating. Quite an interest in dragons for someone who knows nothing about them, McNair observed dryly, handing the journal back. Before Harry could respond, a sharp crack sounded from the back garden, followed by a knock at the kitchen door. Petunia jumped nervously. That'll be Professor McGonagall, Harry said, hope surging. Someone had gotten his message after all. But when Vernon wrenched open the kitchen door, it wasn't McGonagall who stood there. It was a squat, toad-like woman with a wide mouth and bulging eyes, dressed in a fluffy pink cardigan over ministry robes. Dolores Umbridge, Senior Undersecretary to the Minister for Magic, she announced in a girlish voice that didn't match her appearance. I received word that the Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures had located the source of our unusual readings. McNair straightened, suddenly deferential. Madam Undersecretary. We've identified the Potter boy as having dragon contact, but haven't located the creature itself. Umbridge's gaze fixed on Harry, her smile widening in a way that made him distinctly uncomfortable. Harry Potter. How delightful to meet you at last. I've heard so much about your special circumstances. Something in her tone sent warning signals through Harry's mind. This woman was dangerous in a way the other officials weren't. I don't know anything about any dragon, Harry stated firmly. Oh, I think you do, Umbridge contradicted softly. Our detection charms have been registering unusual magical activity in this area for months. Dragon magic, specifically. And all centered around you, Mr. Potter. She turned to her colleagues. Have you questioned his guardians? What do they know? Nothing. Vernon blustered. We want nothing to do with any of this unnaturalness. Ah, but you've been harboring a magical child, Umbridge pointed out. Surely you must have noticed something unusual. Large amounts of meat disappearing, perhaps. Strange noises at night. Unexplained fires. Petunia's eyes widened fractionally, enough to confirm at least one of those suspicions. Umbridge didn't miss it. Mrs. Dursley, she said sweetly, withholding information about dangerous magical creatures is a criminal offense. One that applies to muggles in guardianship positions. Now see here. Vernon began. We know nothing about any dragon. Petunia interrupted shrilly. The boy has some sort of pet in an enchanted shed thing in the woods. That wizard with the beard set it up. We don't ask questions. Harry's heart sank. So much for plausible deniability. Umbridge's smile turned triumphant. An enchanted structure in the woods. How interesting. McNair, take a team back there immediately. Use Class 5 containment protocols. No. Harry shouted, panic rising. You can't. Mr. Potter, Umbridge said, her sweet tone developing an edge, interfering with ministry business is a serious matter. If you've been illegally harboring a dragon, the consequences could be severe, even for someone of your celebrity status. Harry's mind raced. He couldn't let them capture Ember. But how to stop them? Harry. Ember's voice suddenly filled his mind, more urgent than before. The silver-hair woman is fighting the Ministry humans in the grove. She says to bring the journal, emergency protocol. Elara's fighting the Ministry? Harry replied, shocked. How many officials are there? Many. The tree home is surrounded. She cannot hold them long. The situation was spiraling out of control faster than Harry could manage. If Elara was under attack too, this was clearly a coordinated effort. Madam Umbridge, Harry said, trying to keep his voice steady, I think there's been a misunderstanding. If you'll allow me to contact Professor McGonagall has already been informed, Umbridge cut him off. She's on her way. In the meantime, I think you should come with us to the Ministry for your own safety. That was the last thing Harry wanted. Once separated from Ember and taken to the Ministry, who knew what might happen? I'd rather wait for Professor McGonagall here, Harry insisted. I'm afraid that's not possible, Umbridge replied, her smile never faltering. Mr. McNair, please escort Mr. Potter to the Ministry. The rest of you, secure the structure in the woods. As McNair moved toward Harry, the boy made his decision. He had one chance, and it was risky. Ember, I need you. Southeast corner of the garden. 3 minutes. Coming, came the immediate response. Harry took a deep breath, centered himself as Elara had taught him, and called upon his magic. Without the focus wand, this would be difficult, but not impossible. I'm sorry, he said quietly, but I can't go with you. With a sharp, focused gesture, Harry released a pulse of magical energy that knocked everyone back several steps, not violently, but enough to create confusion. In the moment of chaos, he bolted for the back door, slamming it behind him as he ran into the garden. Stop him, he heard Umbridge shriek from inside. Harry raced toward the back fence, counting seconds in his head. The journal was still in his pocket, but he wasn't sure how the emergency protocol Elara mentioned was supposed to work. Behind him, the kitchen door burst open. Spells whizzed past his head, stunning spells, he guessed, not intended to harm but definitely to incapacitate. 2 more seconds, Harry muttered to himself, diving behind a garden shed as another spell cracked into the fence beside him. Right on cue, a massive shadow passed overhead. With a thunderous roar, Ember descended into the Dursleys' perfectly ordinary back garden, wings creating a downdraft that flattened Petunia's prized hydrangeas. The Ministry officials froze in shock at the sight of the magnificent dragon, giving Harry the moment he needed. He sprinted from his hiding place and vaulted onto Ember's back, grabbing the familiar handholds. Go, he shouted aloud, though Ember needed no instruction. Powerful wings beat downward as Ember launched himself skyward, narrowly avoiding a volley of spells from the recovered officials. The grove. Harry directed. Elara needs help. Ember banked sharply, accelerating toward the ancient woodland that concealed Elara's home. Below them, Harry could see more Ministry officials appearing in the Dursleys' garden, apparently summoned by some magical alert. Harry, the journal, Ember reminded him. Emergency protocol. Harry pulled out the leather-bound book, flipping it open as they soared over Little Whinging. To his surprise, words were appearing on the page in Elara's distinctive handwriting, Ministry raid coordinated by Umbridge and Malfoy. Magical Grove compromised. Execute Protocol Phoenix immediately. Open the journal to the center page and press your hand to the Phoenix symbol. It will transport you both to safety. Trust no one until you see me again. Harry quickly flipped to the center of the journal, finding an intricate drawing of a phoenix that seemed to shimmer on the page. What about Elara? He asked Ember. We can't just leave her. The silver-hair woman fights to give us time, Ember replied grimly. She knew this might happen. Prepared for it. Below them, the woodland came into view. Even from the air, Harry could see flashes of spellfire illuminating the trees. A magical battle was clearly underway. Part of him wanted to dive in, to help Elara fight off whoever was attacking her sanctuary. But he remembered her repeated lessons about strategy over emotion. Sometimes, she'd told him once, the bravest thing is to retreat, to live and fight another day. With a heavy heart, Harry pressed his palm against the phoenix symbol. Immediately, it began to glow with golden light that spread across the page, then enveloped both boy and dragon in a warm, fiery aura. The last thing Harry saw before the world disappeared in a flash of flame was a jet of red light streaking toward them from below, a spell that missed by inches as they vanished from the skies above Surrey. When the golden light faded, they were somewhere else entirely. Harry and Ember materialized on a rocky outcropping overlooking a vast, mist-shrouded valley. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks lost in clouds. The air was cooler and smelled of pine and wild heather. "Where are we?" Harry gasped, struggling to catch his breath after the disorienting transportation. Ember landed gracefully despite the sudden transition, his claws finding purchase on the rocky ground. He sniffed the air, head swiveling to take in their surroundings. Not England, he concluded. Mountains. Old magic. Safe place. Harry slid from Ember's back, his legs shaky from the magical journey and the adrenaline of their escape. The journal in his hand had changed, the phoenix symbol now animated, the magical bird preening itself on the page. Words appeared below it, Northern Scotland. Follow the phoenix. Shelter awaits. As if responding to these words, the illustrated phoenix flew off the page, manifesting as a small creature of golden light that hovered before them, then began flying down a narrow path that wound along the mountainside. "We follow?" Ember asked. "I don't see that we have much choice," Harry replied. "Elara trusted this escape route. And we can't go back to Surrey now." Together, they followed the Phoenix guide, Harry walking beside Ember rather than riding. The path was steep in places but clear enough. After about 20 minutes, it curved around a rocky spur to reveal a small stone cottage nestled against the mountainside, partially hidden by ancient pine trees. The phoenix flew to the cottage door, then dissolved into sparks that settled into the wood itself, causing intricate runes to glow briefly before fading. Harry approached cautiously, Ember close behind. The dragon's senses were alert for any threat, but he detected none. "Smells of the silver-hair woman," Ember reported. "Old scent, but recent enough. She has been here." That was reassuring. Harry reached for the iron handle of the cottage door, half expecting some magical challenge or barrier. Instead, it swung open easily, revealing a cozy interior. Despite its small exterior, the cottage was surprisingly spacious inside, another example of wizarding space expansion. A fire burned merrily in a stone hearth, illuminating a main room filled with comfortable furniture, bookshelves, and cabinets of supplies. A large circular area to one side was clearly designed for Ember, with a heated stone floor and high ceiling. Most importantly, the cottage felt safe, protected by layers of magic that Harry could almost taste in the air. As they entered, a piece of parchment on a central table glowed briefly. Harry picked it up and read Elara's familiar script, "Harry and Ember, if you're reading this, the worst has happened. The Ministry has discovered us, likely through Lucius Malfoy's machinations. This safe house is unplottable and protected by the Fidelius charm, only those given its location through the journal can find it. You should be safe here while I deal with the situation in Surrey. There are supplies for both of you that should last several weeks. Do not attempt to return or contact anyone until I come for you personally. If I haven't arrived within 1 month, there is a second protocol in the journal labeled Sanctuary. Use it only as a last resort. Stay hidden. Stay safe. Trust your bond." Elara. Harry read the note twice, then passed its contents to Ember through their mental link. "She knew this might happen," Ember observed. "Prepared escape for us, but not for herself. Because she knew they were mainly after you," Harry realized. An Imperial Skydancer would be worth risking Ministry resources to capture. Elara was just, in the way. The thought made Harry's chest tight with worry and guilt. Elara had put herself at risk to protect them, and now she was facing Ministry forces alone. She is strong, Harry, Ember reminded him. And clever. The silver-hair woman has survived exile before. I hope you're right, Harry sighed, sinking onto a comfortable chair by the fire. I just wish there was something we could do to help her. For now, we do as she asks, Ember said pragmatically. We wait. We prepare. And if necessary, we fight. Harry nodded, looking around at what would be their home for the foreseeable future. The cottage was well stocked with food, books, and even training materials similar to what Elara used in their lessons. Whatever happened next, she had ensured they wouldn't be helpless. 1 month, Harry said firmly. We give her 1 month. Then we find out what's happened and take action. Ember settled onto the heated stone area, his amber eyes reflecting the firelight. 1 month, he agreed. Then we burn whatever stands in our way. The days in the Scottish hideaway passed slowly yet purposefully. Harry established a routine of study and practice, determined to be stronger and more prepared when they eventually returned to face whatever awaited them. Each morning began with physical exercise, running the mountain paths, climbing rocks, building the stamina that magic alone couldn't provide. Elara had always emphasized that a strong body supported strong magic. Afternoons were devoted to magical study. The cottage contained an impressive library of rare texts, including several volumes on wandless magic that Harry devoured eagerly. Without Elara's guidance, progress was slower, but Harry's determination never wavered. Ember, meanwhile, took advantage of the remote location to practice flying in the vast mountain ranges that surrounded them. The dragon returned each evening with new discoveries, hidden valleys, crystal-clear lakes, even ruins of ancient structures that predated modern wizarding settlements. This place has old magic, Ember reported after exploring a circle of standing stones half buried in a distant valley. Magic that remembers dragons. Their bond continued to deepen during this isolated period. Without the distractions of school or the Dursleys, Harry found he could extend his mental connection with Ember over greater distances. He began to experience brief flashes of dragon sight even when Ember was miles away, seeing the world through his friend's superior vision, feeling the exhilaration of soaring through mountain updrafts. On the 15th day of their exile, something unexpected happened. Harry was practicing a particularly challenging wandless shield charm when Ember, who had been dozing by the fire, suddenly raised his head. Someone comes, he announced, rising to his feet. Magic user. Familiar scent, but not the silver-hair woman. Harry immediately dropped into a defensive stance, the shield charm solidifying around him. Friend or foe? Ember sniffed the air again. Not enemy, I think. But caution is wise. They positioned themselves strategically, Harry behind the shield, Ember coiled to strike if necessary. Minutes later, a soft knock sounded at the door. Harry? Called a familiar Scottish brogue. It's Professor McGonagall. I've come alone. Harry and Ember exchanged glances. Elara's warning echoed in their minds, trust no one until you see me again. How did you find us? Harry called through the door, making no move to open it. This place is supposed to be under the Fidelius charm. Elara Nightshade gave me the location, McGonagall replied. After considerable negotiation with the Ministry. That didn't sound right. If Elara could send McGonagall, why not come herself? Test her, Ember suggested. Ask something only the real birdcat would know. What form does my Patronus take? Harry called out, naming something McGonagall had helped him practice earlier that year. There was a pause, then, you cannot yet produce a corporeal Patronus, Mr. Potter. We've only practiced the shield form, which manifests as a golden mist in your case. Rather impressive for your age. That was correct, but still not definitive proof. One more question, Harry insisted. What did you transfigure for me on my 8th birthday? A set of dragon figurines that mimic the movements of real dragons, including one specially designed to resemble Ember, McGonagall answered promptly. The Imperial Skydancer figure had ruby scales that shift to gold when in sunlight. Harry relaxed slightly. That detail wasn't something an imposter would likely know. I will judge, Ember decided. Open the door, but be ready. Harry cautiously opened the door to reveal Professor McGonagall looking more tired and stern than usual. Her normally immaculate robes showed signs of recent travel, and her hair, while still in its tight bun, had several strands escaping. Ember moved forward, head lowered to examine the witch more closely. After a tense moment, he nodded. It is her. But she brings troubling news. Professor, Harry said, stepping aside to let her enter. Is Elara all right? What's happening? McGonagall entered the cottage, her sharp eyes taking in both Harry and Ember before she spoke. Miss Nightshade has been taken into Ministry custody, Mr. Potter. The charges are numerous: harboring an unregistered Class XXXXX magical creature, interfering with Ministry operations, and resisting arrest chief among them. Harry's heart sank. Are they hurting her? No, McGonagall said firmly. Albus intervened personally to ensure her proper treatment. But her situation remains precarious. She lowered herself into a chair, looking suddenly older. The events in Surrey have caused quite the uproar. The minister himself is involved now, with Dolores Umbridge whispering in his ear about dangerous creatures and irresponsible guardianship. What about the Dursleys? Harry asked, realizing he hadn't spared much thought for his relatives. Memory charms were applied, McGonagall explained. They recall a gas leak requiring evacuation, nothing more. However, your home situation is now under review by the Ministry. It wasn't a home, Harry said quietly. Just a place I had to stay. McGonagall's expression softened momentarily. Indeed. Which brings me to the purpose of my visit. She straightened, becoming the practical professor Harry knew so well. The Ministry is demanding Ember be remanded to the Dragon Preserve in Romania. Fudge has issued an order for your return to Ministry custody pending new guardianship arrangements. They will not take me, Ember growled, smoke curling from his nostrils. No one is taking either of you anywhere against your will, McGonagall stated firmly. Albus and I have made that abundantly clear. However, we must proceed carefully. The political situation is delicate. Professor, Harry said slowly, Elara told us Lucius Malfoy was involved in all this. Is that true? McGonagall's lips thinned to nearly nothing. Mr. Malfoy has certainly been present at the Ministry during these proceedings, offering his assistance and expertise regarding rare magical creatures. His interest in this situation is concerning. He wants Ember, Harry said bluntly. Elara said the Malfoys were connected to Voldemort. McGonagall flinched slightly at the name but didn't correct him. Miss Nightshade was correct to be wary. Lucius Malfoy's involvement suggests motives beyond simple Ministry regulations. So what do we do? Harry asked. We can't stay hidden forever. No, McGonagall agreed. Which is why Albus has proposed a compromise. She withdrew an official-looking parchment from her robes. This is an offer to the Ministry: you and Ember will return to Wizarding Britain under Hogwarts protection. Ember will be classified as a bonded familiar rather than an unregistered dragon, placing him under educational statutes rather than creature regulations. Hogwarts. But I'm not 11 yet, Harry pointed out. And the term hasn't started. Exceptions can be made for exceptional circumstances, McGonagall replied with the ghost of a smile. You would be enrolled as a special case student, beginning your education early with modified coursework. Harry considered this. Hogwarts was supposed to be one of the safest places in Wizarding Britain, a fortress of ancient magic under Dumbledore's protection. It might be their best option. And Elara? He asked. What happens to her? McGonagall's expression tightened again. That remains complicated. Her actions, while well-intentioned, broke several laws. Albus is negotiating for leniency, but it will take time. Ask about the Malfoy human, Ember prompted. Will he have access to Hogwarts? Harry relayed the question, and McGonagall nodded approvingly at their foresight. Lucius Malfoy is a school governor, she acknowledged. However, his authority is limited, particularly regarding matters Albus declares under direct headmaster jurisdiction. Which this would be. She leaned forward earnestly. I cannot promise absolute safety, Mr. Potter. But Hogwarts offers better protection than continued isolation, especially as the Ministry is likely to locate even this safe house eventually. Harry looked to Ember, sharing thoughts and impressions through their bond. After a brief internal conference, he turned back to McGonagall. Before we decide, he said firmly, we need to speak with Elara ourselves. To make sure she's really okay, and to get her advice. McGonagall hesitated. That would be difficult to arrange. She's being held in a secure Ministry facility. Then we stay here, Harry stated, crossing his arms. No offense, Professor, but Elara warned us to trust no one until we saw her again. Instead of becoming angry, McGonagall nodded with what looked like approval. Caution is indeed warranted. Let me see what can be arranged. She rose from her chair. I shall return within 3 days with news, either a way for you to communicate with Miss Nightshade or an alternative suggestion. As she prepared to leave, she paused, looking back at Harry with an unusually soft expression. You've grown considerably in your time with Ember and Miss Nightshade, Mr. Potter. Your parents would be proud of the young wizard you're becoming. With that, she departed, leaving Harry and Ember to consider their limited options. We should prepare for all possibilities, Ember suggested pragmatically. Including fighting. Harry nodded, turning back to his practice. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as always. True to her word, McGonagall returned exactly 3 days later. This time, she brought a peculiar magical device, a crystalline sphere mounted on an intricate silver base. A secure communication mirror, she explained, setting it on the table. Modified by Albus himself to bypass Ministry monitoring charms. Miss Nightshade is in possession of its twin. Harry approached the device cautiously. How does it work? Simply place your hand on the crystal and speak her name, McGonagall instructed. I shall wait outside to give you privacy. After the professor had stepped out, Harry and Ember gathered around the communication mirror. Harry placed his palm against the cool crystal surface. Elara Nightshade, he said clearly. The crystal clouded, then cleared to reveal Elara's face. She looked tired but unharmed, her silver-streaked hair pulled back severely. Harry, she said, visible relief flooding her features. And Ember. You're both safe. We're fine, Harry assured her. But what about you? Are they treating you well? Elara's mouth twisted in a wry smile. Well enough, thanks to Dumbledore's intervention. No Dementors or Dark Cells, at least. Can they hear us now? Harry asked, glancing nervously at the crystal. No, Elara assured him. This is a secure connection. Dumbledore's work is thorough. Harry nodded, then got straight to the point. McGonagall says Dumbledore wants us to come to Hogwarts early. That I'd be enrolled as a special student and Ember would be classified as my familiar. Is that safe? Elara considered the question carefully. Hogwarts is certainly safer than remaining in hiding. The Ministry will find you eventually. Magical children, especially ones with your signature, cannot remain undetected forever. But what about Malfoy? McGonagall said he's a school governor. Lucius Malfoy's influence is considerable, Elara acknowledged. But even he must tread carefully around Albus Dumbledore. At Hogwarts, you'll have not only Dumbledore's protection but that of the castle itself, ancient magic that responds to genuine need. She leaned closer to the crystal on her end. More importantly, Harry, you need proper magical education. The foundations we've built together are strong, but incomplete. At Hogwarts, you'll have access to knowledge and training I couldn't provide. Harry glanced at Ember, who had been watching the exchange intently. What do you think? The silver-hair woman speaks truth, Ember replied. We cannot hide forever. Better to face enemies from a position of strength. What about you? Harry asked Alara. Will you be released? A shadow crossed her face. Eventually. The legal proceedings are complex. But don't worry about me, I've survived worse than ministry holding cells. This doesn't feel right, Harry protested. Leaving you to face punishment for helping us. Listen carefully, Harry, Alara said, her voice taking on the firm tone she used during their most serious lessons. What matters now is your safety and continued growth. The knowledge you and Ember represent, the revival of the Imperial Skydancer bloodline, the unprecedented familiar bond, this is bigger than any one person, including me. She smiled sadly. I knew the risks when I chose to help you. I regret nothing. She honors us with her sacrifice, Ember observed solemnly. We must honor her by growing stronger. After further discussion of the details, Harry reluctantly agreed to McGonagall's plan. They would travel to Hogwarts the following day, using a specialized portkey designed to transport a dragon safely. Before ending the communication, Alara gave them one final piece of advice. Remember what I taught you about trusting your instincts, Harry. The bond between you and Ember transcends normal magic. Listen to it, especially when others tell you to doubt. With that cryptic warning, her image faded from the crystal. McGonagall returned to finalize the arrangements. Pack whatever you wish to bring, she instructed. Though Hogwarts will provide all necessities. Professor, Harry asked as she prepared the portkey, what exactly is going to happen when we arrive? Won't the other professors object to having a dragon in the castle? McGonagall's expression turned wry. The Hogwarts staff has seen many unusual things over the centuries, Mr. Potter. A bonded familiar, even one of Ember's magnitude, is hardly the strangest. Arrangements have been made for appropriate accommodation. That night, as Harry packed the few belongings he'd acquired during their time in hiding, he felt a curious mixture of anticipation and dread. Hogwarts represented the fulfillment of a dream, the formal beginning of his magical education. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a situation far more complex and dangerous than McGonagall was admitting. We will be vigilant, Ember assured him, sensing his unease. And if danger comes. The dragon didn't need to complete the thought. Harry felt the protective heat that flared through their bond, a promise of fire and fury should anyone threaten either of them. Together, Harry said simply, resting his hand on Ember's scales. Always, Ember agreed. The portkey journey to Hogwarts was far more comfortable than their emergency escape from Surrey. McGonagall had created what she called a cushion transition field that eliminated the usual disorientation and nausea associated with portkey travel. They materialized on a grassy slope overlooking a vast lake. Beyond the water stood Hogwarts Castle, a magnificent structure of towers and turrets that seemed to glow with ancient magic even in daylight. Welcome to Hogwarts, Mr. Potter, McGonagall said, allowing herself a small smile at Harry's awestruck expression. Impressive nest, Ember commented, examining the castle with keen interest. Old stones. Strong magic. Before Harry could respond, a figure emerged from the castle's main entrance and began walking toward them. Even at a distance, the long silver beard and colorful robes made Albus Dumbledore unmistakable. Ah, our special guests have arrived, the headmaster called cheerfully as he approached. Welcome, Harry. And welcome to you as well, Ember. The dragon regarded Dumbledore with cautious respect. The powerful wizard remembers my name. Polite, at least. Hello, Professor Dumbledore, Harry replied, unconsciously straightening his posture. Despite the headmaster's friendly demeanor, there was no denying the aura of power that surrounded him. Thank you for arranging this. Not at all, my boy. Hogwarts has always adapted to accommodate those with unique circumstances. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes moved to Ember. And I must say, yours are perhaps the most unique I've encountered in quite some time. He gestured toward the castle. Shall we proceed? I believe a tour is in order before we settle you into your quarters. As they walked toward the castle, Dumbledore explained the arrangements. Term doesn't begin for another month, which gives us time to acclimate you both to the castle. The staff currently in residence have been informed of your arrival and special status. And Ember? Harry asked. Where will he stay? We've prepared a special chamber connected to your dormitory, Dumbledore explained. A spacious area with direct access to the grounds for flight, while maintaining the security befitting such a remarkable familiar. Harry nodded, relieved. He'd worried Ember might be relegated to some distant part of the grounds, separated from him. The tour of the castle was overwhelming in its scope. Hogwarts was enormous, with countless corridors, moving staircases, and hidden passages. Harry tried to memorize the main routes, but it was clearly going to take time to navigate confidently. The most impressive moment came when they entered the Great Hall, a vast chamber with an enchanted ceiling that perfectly reflected the sky outside. Sky inside stone, Ember marveled. Clever magic. Dumbledore led them finally to a tower on the castle's eastern side. Unlike the rest of the school, which was divided into house dormitories, this area seemed specifically prepared for their unique needs. These will be your quarters, Dumbledore announced, opening a heavy wooden door to reveal a comfortable suite. A main sitting room connected to a bedroom for Harry, a study area filled with books, and, most impressively, a large chamber with a high ceiling and heated stone floor for Ember. This is amazing, Harry said honestly. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. The castle seems quite pleased to accommodate you both. Hogwarts has a certain awareness that responds to worthy inhabitants. He gestured to the far wall of Ember's chamber, which featured massive doors that opened onto a stone platform overlooking the grounds. For flying access, he explained. Though I must ask that such activities be coordinated with Professor McGonagall or myself initially, for safety reasons. After showing them the various magical features of their quarters, Dumbledore settled into a chair by the fire, his expression turning more serious. Now, Harry, we must discuss your unique situation. Your early admission to Hogwarts comes with certain expectations and responsibilities. Harry nodded, taking a seat across from the headmaster. Ember curled protectively behind Harry's chair, listening intently. You will begin a modified first-year curriculum, Dumbledore continued. Professor McGonagall informs me that your magical education thus far, while unconventional, has given you a solid foundation. We will build upon that, with the goal of integrating you fully with your age peers when they arrive next month. What about Ember? Harry asked. How will this work when other students are here? Ember's status as your familiar grants him certain rights within these walls, Dumbledore explained. However, practical considerations remain. We cannot have a dragon, even one as well-behaved as Ember, attending regular classes with dozens of students. Reasonable, Ember commented privately to Harry. Small humans would be distracting. And flammable. Harry suppressed a smile at his friend's observation. So what's the solution? A compromise, Dumbledore replied. Ember will remain primarily in your quarters during class hours but may join you for certain outdoor lessons and supervised sessions. Additionally, evening flights will be permitted within designated areas of the grounds. It wasn't ideal, but it was workable. Harry had expected far more restrictions. There is one more matter, Dumbledore said, his tone growing even more serious. The Ministry's interest in your situation has not abated. Minister Fudge has appointed Dolores Umbridge as a special liaison to monitor your integration at Hogwarts. Harry tensed. The woman from the Ministry? The one who arrested Alara? The very same, Dumbledore confirmed. She will be making periodic visits to the castle to evaluate your progress. Threat, Ember growled softly. While Madame Umbridge is within these walls, she is subject to my authority, Dumbledore assured them, apparently noticing Ember's displeasure. Her interaction with you will be limited and supervised. However, I tell you this so you are prepared. The implications were clear: they would be watched, evaluated, possibly even tested in some way. "What about Alara?" Harry asked. "Is there any update on her situation?" A flicker of something, frustration perhaps, crossed Dumbledore's serene features. "Miss Nightshade's case is progressing slowly. The charges are serious, but not insurmountable. I continue to advocate for leniency, given the circumstances." Harry wasn't entirely satisfied with this answer, but recognized that pushing further would yield little result. "For now," Dumbledore continued, rising from his chair, "I suggest you both rest and familiarize yourselves with your new surroundings. Tomorrow, we will begin assessing your current magical abilities to design an appropriate curriculum." With that, the headmaster bid them good night and departed, leaving Harry and Ember to explore their new quarters in more detail. "What do you think?" Harry asked as they examined the impressive chambers. Ember considered the question carefully, his amber eyes sweeping the room. "The old wizard speaks truth, but not all truth. He has plans within plans." "Dangerous?" Harry asked. "Not to us directly," Ember replied. "But he moves us like pieces in a game. We must remember to play our own game also." Harry nodded, stroking Ember's scales thoughtfully. Even at 8, nearly 9, years old, he understood that adults rarely revealed everything to children. Dumbledore, for all his kindness, was clearly maneuvering them for some purpose beyond simple education. "We'll be careful," Harry promised aloud. "And we'll find a way to help Alara too." Ember rumbled in agreement, settling onto his heated stone floor. "Tomorrow we learn the territory. Map escape routes. Identify potential allies." Harry smiled at his dragon's strategic thinking. "Good plan. And I'll start learning everything I can about how the ministry works. There must be a way to get Alara released properly." As night fell over Hogwarts, Harry stood on Ember's balcony, looking out across the moonlit grounds. Their situation had changed dramatically in just a few weeks, from hidden existence in Surrey to fugitive status in Scotland to special residence of the world's premier magical school. Whatever came next, they would face it together, two unusual friends against a world that didn't quite know what to make of them. Chapter 3, Flight and Fight. Harry's eyes snapped open at exactly 5:30 a.m., no alarm clock needed. After nearly 2 years of this routine, his body knew the drill. Silently, he slipped out of bed in Dudley's second bedroom, pulled on his clothes, and grabbed his pre-packed backpack. The Dursleys wouldn't wake for another hour. Perfect. At 10 years old, Harry Potter had mastered the art of living two completely separate lives. In one, he was the reluctantly tolerated nephew at number 4 Privet Drive, still doing chores, still eating at the Dursleys' table, still maintaining the facade of normality that kept the peace. In the other, he was a young wizard with growing powers, bonded to a magnificent dragon, and apprenticed to an exiled wandmaker. And he much preferred the second life. Harry crept down the stairs, avoiding the third step that always creaked. The house was silent except for Vernon's distant snoring. He slipped through the kitchen, filched an apple from the fruit bowl, and quietly unlocked the back door. Dawn was just breaking as Harry darted across the garden, vaulted the fence with practiced ease, and disappeared into the woods beyond. The moment he entered the tree-line, his posture changed, shoulders straightening, pace quickening, a smile spreading across his face. "You're late," Ember's voice resonated in his mind, simultaneously amused and impatient. By 3 minutes, Harry countered, breaking into a jog along a hidden path that wound deeper into the forest. "Uncle Vernon checked my room twice last night. Had to wait until he was properly asleep." After their dramatic escape from ministry officials and subsequent early enrollment at Hogwarts 2 years earlier, Harry had eventually negotiated a compromise. He would return to the Dursleys during school holidays to maintain the blood protection Dumbledore insisted was crucial, but would split his time between Privet Drive and the magical world. The arrangement worked, barely. The Dursleys, their memories modified to forget the dragon incident, believed Harry attended a special school for troubled but gifted children. They didn't ask questions, and Harry didn't offer explanations. 10 minutes of fast hiking brought Harry to a massive oak that looked ordinary to anyone without magic. To Harry, however, the shimmer of protective enchantments was visible, a testament to his growing magical sensitivity. "Libertas," he whispered, placing his palm against the bark. The tree shimmered, revealing a narrow passage that hadn't been there seconds before. Harry stepped through, and immediately the sounds and smells of the forest transformed. The air became richer, filled with the scent of herbs and magical plants. Soft lights illuminated a path forward, and distant chimes played on a breeze that shouldn't exist inside a tree. The passage opened into a vast clearing hidden from the outside world by powerful magic. At its center stood Elara Nightshade's reconstructed home, no longer a single tree dwelling but a complex of interconnected structures built harmoniously into the living forest. Smaller homes dotted the periphery, housing the growing community of magical beings who had sought sanctuary here. And waiting in the central clearing, massive and magnificent, was Ember. In the 4 years since hatching, the Imperial Skydancer had grown to the size of a small house. His wingspan now exceeded 50 feet, his scales shifting between deep crimson and burnished gold depending on his mood. Powerful muscles rippled beneath those gleaming scales, and his amber eyes, each larger than Harry's head, glowed with intelligence and impatience. Finally, Ember rumbled, lowering his head to Harry's level. "The sky calls, little wizard." Harry grinned, reaching up to scratch the sensitive spot beneath Ember's jaw. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Ready for our patrol?" In response, Ember lowered his body, extending one foreleg to create a step. Harry scrambled up with practiced ease, settling into the natural saddle-like depression behind the dragon's shoulders. Years of flying together had perfected their positioning, Harry secured by specially designed leather straps that allowed movement without risk of falling. "Hold tight," Ember warned, though the caution was unnecessary. Harry was already braced, body tensed in anticipation. With a powerful thrust of his hind legs, Ember launched skyward. Enormous wings beat downward, creating a downdraft that flattened the grass below. Within seconds, they were soaring above the treetops, climbing rapidly into the pale morning sky. Harry whooped with pure joy as they ascended, the rush of flight never diminishing no matter how many times they took to the air. Through their bond, he felt Ember's matching exhilaration, the dragon's pleasure in stretching his wings, catching thermal currents, claiming the sky as his domain. "Northern route today?" Harry called over the wind. "Yes. The silver-hair woman wants us to check the boundary stones. She sensed disturbance in the north quadrant." Harry nodded, leaning slightly as Ember banked toward the northern edge of Elara's magically hidden territory. After her release from Ministry custody 18 months ago, negotiated by Dumbledore in exchange for certain magical concessions, Elara had established a new sanctuary. More extensive and better protected than her previous home, it covered nearly 5 square miles of magically expanded forest, invisible to muggles and unplottable to wizards. Boundary stones marked the perimeter, anchoring powerful wards that kept out unwanted visitors. Regular patrols were necessary to maintain these protections, a task Harry and Ember had eagerly claimed. As they soared over the treetops, Harry's thoughts drifted to the complex path that had brought them here. Their time at Hogwarts had been brief but educational. After 3 months of special instruction, Dumbledore had determined that Harry's unique circumstances made traditional schooling problematic. The constant ministry oversight, primarily through Umbridge's evaluations, created too many opportunities for interference with the dragon bond. Instead, Dumbledore had arranged a compromise, Elara's release in exchange for her oath to provide structured magical education under distant ministry oversight. Harry would return to Hogwarts at 11 with his age peers, better prepared and with proper arrangements for Ember. The politics behind this arrangement remained largely opaque to Harry, though he understood enough to know that powerful factions were maneuvering around him. Lucius Malfoy had mysteriously withdrawn his most vocal objections after private meetings with Dumbledore, meetings that the headmaster refused to discuss. Thinking heavy thoughts again, Ember observed through their bond. "I feel your mind churning." Just reflecting, Harry replied, patting the dragon's neck. We've come a long way from that cupboard under the stairs. And we'll go much further yet, Ember predicted confidently. Look, the boundary stones. Below them, a circle of massive standing stones became visible through breaks in the canopy. Normally, they emitted a subtle magical glow visible only to those keyed into the wards. Today, however, the northernmost stone was dark. That's not good, Harry muttered, immediately alert. Take us down for a closer look. Ember descended in a controlled spiral, landing gracefully in a small clearing near the inactive stone. Harry dismounted, approaching the monolith cautiously. Up close, the damage was evident, dark scorch marks etched into the stone's surface, forming patterns that disrupted the protective runes. These weren't random marks, they were deliberate magical tampering. Harry ran his fingers over the damaged sections, feeling residual magic that made his skin tingle unpleasantly. Someone's been trying to break through the wards. Recently, Ember confirmed, sniffing the stone. Magic still fresh. Human magic, but twisted. Wrong. A chill ran down Harry's spine despite the warm summer morning. We need to tell Alara. Can you repair it temporarily? Ember nodded, moving closer to the stone. He inhaled deeply, then exhaled a precisely controlled jet of flame, not the orange red of normal fire but a shimmering blue-gold heat that enveloped the damaged runes. Under this magical flame, the scorch marks began to recede, the stone's original patterns reasserting themselves. Harry watched in fascination. Ember's control over different types of flame had developed remarkably over the past year. According to Alara's ancient texts, mature Imperial Skydancers could produce at least 4 distinct types of fire, each with unique properties. So far, Ember had mastered 3, standard destructive fire, the blue-gold restorative flame he was using now, and a gentle warming fire that could heat without burning. Done, Ember announced, stepping back from the stone. But temporary only. The silver-hair woman must renew the primary enchantments. Let's head back, Harry agreed, climbing onto Ember's back. Whoever did this might still be nearby. They took off again, but instead of flying directly back to the sanctuary, Ember gained altitude and began a wide circular patrol of the entire perimeter. Through their bond, Harry sensed the dragon's heightened alertness, every sense extended, searching for threats. There, Ember suddenly communicated, banking sharply toward the eastern boundary. Movement near the creek stone. Harry squinted in the direction Ember indicated. At first, he saw nothing but trees and the distant glimmer of water. Then, a flash of movement, a figure in dark robes, quickly disappearing into denser forest. Can you catch up? Harry asked, adrenaline surging. Too thick for landing, Ember assessed. But we can see where they go. The dragon accelerated, powerful wings driving them forward as he skimmed just above the treetops. Harry leaned low against Ember's neck, eyes fixed on the glimpses of movement below. Whoever was fleeing was moving with unnatural speed, suggesting magical assistance. The chase led them to the edge of Alara's territory, where the boundary stones marked the transition from magically protected land to ordinary forest. The figure paused at this threshold, and for a moment, Harry caught a clear view, a tall man with long white blonde hair, carrying what appeared to be a silver instrument. Malfoy, Harry breathed, recognizing Lucius from Alara's detailed descriptions. It's Lucius Malfoy. Ember growled, the sound rumbling through his entire body. The enemy wizard. Shall I burn him? For a tempting moment, Harry considered saying yes. Lucius Malfoy had been a persistent threat since they discovered Ember's existence, maneuvering politically to gain access to the rare dragon while maintaining plausible deniability. No, Harry decided reluctantly. We need to know what he's doing first. And attacking a prominent wizard would just give the Ministry excuse to come after us again. Below them, Malfoy seemed to sense their presence. He looked up, his pale face visible for an instant before he raised his wand. A jet of red light shot skyward. Evasive. Harry shouted unnecessarily, Ember was already banking sharply, avoiding the spell with practiced agility. More spells followed, forcing Ember into a series of aerial maneuvers that would have dislodged a less experienced rider. Harry held tight, his body moving in perfect synchronization with the dragon's. "He's keeping us busy," Ember observed sharply. "Look south." Harry twisted to look in the indicated direction, and his blood ran cold. A second figure had appeared at another boundary stone, this one shorter and dressed in distinctive pink robes. Umbridge, Harry identified grimly. "They're working together." "Coordinated attack on the wards," Ember concluded. "We need the silver-hair woman." "Back to the sanctuary," Harry agreed. "Full speed." Ember abandoned the chase, turning sharply and accelerating toward the heart of their territory. As they flew, Harry pressed his palm to a small crystal pendant hanging around his neck, a communication device Elara had created after their previous close calls with the Ministry. "Elara," he spoke into the crystal. "Perimeter breach attempt. Northern and eastern stones." Malfoy and Umbridge confirmed. The crystal warmed against his skin, indicating the message had been received. Seconds later, Elara's voice responded, tense but controlled. "Return immediately. All residents on alert. Sanctuary protocols initiated." By the time they reached the central clearing, the sanctuary was in organized chaos. Magical beings of various species were securing their dwellings, activating personal protections, or preparing for potential evacuation. Elara stood in the center, directing activities with calm efficiency. At 47, Elara Nightshade remained an impressive figure. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she wore simple dark green robes designed for freedom of movement. The years since her ministry imprisonment had added new lines to her face but also a harder edge to her already formidable magical presence. "Harry, Ember," she greeted as they landed. "Details. Quickly." Harry dismounted, describing what they'd seen while Ember projected mental images directly to Elara, a skill they'd developed over months of practice. "Northern stone was magically sabotaged," Harry explained. "Ember repaired it temporarily, but then we spotted Malfoy near the eastern boundary. When we pursued, Umbridge appeared at the southern stone." Elara's expression darkened. "As we feared. A coordinated attempt to weaken the ward network at multiple points." She gestured to a detailed map of the sanctuary hovering in the air beside her, where glowing points represented the boundary stones. 3 were now pulsing red. "They're testing our defenses," she continued. "Probing for weaknesses before a larger assault." "Why now?" Harry asked. "They've known about this place for over a year." Elara gave him a significant look. "Your 11th birthday approaches, Harry. In less than a month, your Hogwarts letter will arrive. Once you're officially enrolled, the Ministry's ability to intervene in your life diminishes significantly due to educational sovereignty statutes." Understanding dawned. "They're making their move before I'm protected by Hogwarts." "Precisely. Particularly Umbridge, whose influence lies primarily within the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. Once you're at Hogwarts with Ember as a registered familiar under educational protection, her authority becomes limited." A tall forest nymph approached, her bark-like skin shifting nervously. "The small ones are secured in the root chambers," she reported. "The sprites ask if they should activate the mist defenses." "Not yet, Will Owen," Elara replied. "Let's not reveal all our protections at once. For now, strengthen the inner perimeter and prepare the evacuation port keys." As Will Owen departed, Elara turned back to Harry and Ember. "We've prepared for this possibility. Each boundary stone has secondary enchantments that activate if the primary wards fail. They won't keep determined intruders out forever, but they'll buy us time." Harry nodded, familiar with the sanctuary's layered defenses. "What do you need us to do?" "First, rest and replenish," Elara instructed practically. "You'll both need your strength. Then, we'll need you to reinforce the central ward stone. The dragon-wizard bond creates unique magical resonance that strengthens our core protections. As Harry moved to follow these instructions, Elara caught his arm, her expression softening slightly. "Harry. If the sanctuary falls, you and Ember must prioritize your own safety. The community has evacuation plans. Your protection remains paramount." Harry frowned. "I'm not running away if you're in danger. We can fight." "Your courage is admirable but sometimes misplaced," Elara replied with a hint of her teaching voice. "Remember what we've discussed about strategic withdrawal versus last stands." Before Harry could argue further, a magical alarm sounded, 3 sharp notes that echoed throughout the sanctuary. Elara's head snapped up, her focus immediately shifting. "Western boundary breached," she announced, reading magical signals invisible to Harry. "Multiple intruders." The relative calm of organized preparation transformed instantly into urgent action. Elara barked orders to the sanctuary residents while simultaneously activating additional protective measures with complex wandless gestures. "Harry, get to the central ward stone with Ember," she directed. "Channel your combined magic as we practiced. I'll coordinate our defense." Harry hesitated, reluctant to separate from his mentor in a crisis. "She is right," Ember observed through their bond. "Our magic is needed at the core. The silver-hair woman knows what she does." With a quick nod, Harry remounted Ember, and they flew to the heart of the sanctuary, a clearing where a massive crystal protruded from the earth, pulsing with multicolored light. This was the central ward stone, the anchor for all the sanctuary's defenses. Landing beside it, Harry pressed his palms against the smooth crystal surface while Ember positioned himself on the opposite side. As they had practiced many times, Harry closed his eyes and reached through their bond, drawing on their shared magical resonance. The process was unlike any standard wizard magic. Rather than channeling power through a wand or even through wandless intent, Harry opened himself as a conduit between Ember's draconic magic and the earthbound energies of the ward stone. The sensation was extraordinary, like being simultaneously filled with fire and rooted deep in the earth. Through their connection, Harry could feel the sanctuary's defenses, a complex network of magical energies spanning their hidden territory. He could also sense the intrusions, dark, probing tendrils of hostile magic testing the boundaries, searching for weaknesses. "They are many," Ember observed grimly. "More than just the pale wizard and the toad woman." Harry agreed. The magical signature suggested at least a dozen intruders, methodically working to dismantle the sanctuary's protections. More worryingly, he sensed a familiar hostile presence among them, the beast executioner, McNair, whose brutal magic left an unmistakable taint. For 20 minutes, Harry and Ember maintained their connection to the ward stone, reinforcing threatened areas and rerouting magical flows around breached sections. It was exhausting, precise work that demanded their complete concentration. Suddenly, a massive magical shock wave rippled through the network, momentarily disrupting their connection. Harry gasped, almost falling backward as the impact reverberated through his body. "Eastern boundary has fallen," Ember reported, his mental voice tense. "They're inside the outer perimeter." Before Harry could respond, Elara's voice came through the communication crystal, terse and urgent. "Harry, Ember, disengage from the ward stone and prepare for combat. The inner sanctuary has been compromised. Sanctuary residents are evacuating to secondary locations." Harry pulled away from the crystal, feeling the abrupt disconnect like a physical wrench. "Where are you?" he demanded into the communication pendant. "Eastern defensive line," came Elara's reply, her voice now punctuated by the sounds of magical combat. "McNair is leading a team of beast hunters. Ministry badges but not official action, Umbridge's private force. Malfoy is," her voice cut off in a burst of static. "Elara." Harry called, but the pendant remained cold and silent. "We go," Ember decided, lowering his body for Harry to mount. "Now." Harry didn't argue. He leaped onto Ember's back, securing himself just as the dragon launched skyward with explosive force. They cleared the treetops in seconds, gaining a view of the unfolding situation. The sight was devastating. From above, Harry could see magical combat erupting at multiple points throughout the sanctuary. The eastern section, where Elara had been positioned, was enveloped in unnatural mist pierced by flashes of spellfire. To the north, several of the smaller tree dwellings were burning despite their protective enchantments. Most alarmingly, a group of figures in dark robes was advancing methodically toward the central clearing, led by a tall wizard Harry recognized immediately, Lucius Malfoy, his long blonde hair unmistakable even from a distance. There, Harry pointed, directing Ember's attention. Malfoy's heading for the central ward stone. He seeks to destroy the heart, Ember growled, banking sharply toward the intruders. We stop him. The dragon accelerated into a steep dive, aiming directly for Malfoy's group. As they plummeted, Harry felt Ember's chest heating, the buildup of flame ready to be unleashed. Non-lethal, Harry reminded quickly. As much as he despised Malfoy, killing or seriously injuring the politically connected wizard would only worsen their situation. Ember adjusted accordingly. When they were nearly upon the intruders, he released not a deadly inferno but a precisely controlled sheet of flame that struck the ground in a circle around Malfoy's group, creating a wall of fire that halted their advance. Malfoy's head snapped up, his cold aristocratic features contorting with anger as he spotted them. He raised his wand, but Ember was already banking away, climbing beyond easy spell range. Circle back, Harry directed through their bond. We need to find Elara. They soared toward the eastern sector, where the magical mist had grown thicker. Through it, Harry could make out flashes of combat, spells colliding with defensive magic in showers of sparks. There. Ember's mental voice was sharp with alarm. The silver-hair woman. Harry spotted her, Elara locked in combat with 3 opponents simultaneously. Even at a distance, her wandless magic was impressive, shields deflecting hostile spells while she countered with precisely targeted magical strikes. But she was clearly outnumbered, gradually being forced back toward the edge of a ravine. One of her opponents was unmistakable, Walden McNair, his broad shoulders and distinctive executioner's stance recognizable from their previous encounters. The other 2 were unfamiliar ministry-type wizards, their spells coordinated and professional. Dive! Harry commanded, drawing his own wand. Unlike their earliest years together, Harry now had a proper wand, 11 inches of holly with a phoenix feather core, specially procured by Dumbledore before his official Hogwarts enrollment. While he remained skilled at wandless magic thanks to Elara's training, the wand amplified his abilities significantly. Ember plunged toward the battle, his massive form casting a shadow that momentarily distracted Elara's attackers. Harry seized the opportunity, casting a powerful shield charm directly in front of his mentor while Ember released another controlled burst of flame that forced McNair and his companions to dive for cover. In the moment of confusion, Ember landed beside Elara, who immediately scrambled onto his back behind Harry. Central clearings compromised, Harry reported quickly. Malfoy's heading for the wardstone. I know, Elara replied grimly. This was a coordinated assault, more organized than I anticipated. They've breached all outer defenses simultaneously. Ember launched skyward again, narrowly avoiding a barrage of spells from the recovering attackers below. We need to evacuate, Elara continued once they were at a safer altitude. The sanctuary is lost for now. Harry turned to look at her in shock. Lost? But what about everyone else? All the magical beings who live here. Secondary evacuation protocols were activated 10 minutes ago, Elara assured him. The forest nymphs have taken the smaller species to their underground networks. The centaurs were already departing for their ancestral territories. Relief flooded through Harry, though it was quickly replaced by anger. So Malfoy and Umbridge win. They just take our home. They win this battle, perhaps, Elara acknowledged, her voice hard. But not the war. The sanctuary can be rebuilt elsewhere. What matters is keeping you and Ember safe, and ensuring our most valuable knowledge isn't captured. She reached into her robes and withdrew a small wooden box intricately carved with protective runes. This contains the most critical research on Imperial Skydancers and our work on the Dragon-Wizard bond. It cannot fall into Malfoy's hands. As they circled above the increasingly chaotic sanctuary, Harry could see more Ministry-aligned forces converging on the central clearing. The Ward Stone was now surrounded, with Malfoy directing what appeared to be a ritual to dismantle its core enchantments. "Where do we go?" Harry asked, the reality of their situation sinking in. "Back to the Scottish hideaway." Elara shook her head. "Too obvious. They'll check all our known locations." She hesitated, then continued with clear reluctance. "There's one place they won't expect, at least not immediately. A place protected by magic older than the Ministry itself." "Where?" "Godric's Hollow," Elara replied softly. "Your parents' cottage." Harry stiffened in surprise. "My parents' house." "But it was destroyed when Voldemort, the structure, yes," Elara cut in. "But the land itself remains, protected by ancient magic tied to your family line. Magic that recognized and renewed itself the night your mother sacrificed herself for you." Before Harry could process this revelation, a massive magical explosion rocked the sanctuary. Looking down, they saw the central Ward Stone fracturing, releasing waves of wild magic that rippled outward. "The heart is broken," Ember reported grimly. "The nest falls." As if to confirm his assessment, the magical concealment that had hidden the sanctuary began to dissolve. The seamlessly integrated magical dwellings became visible for what they were, structures obviously not created by human hands, radiating magic that any wizard would recognize as non-human in origin. "We need to go now," Elara insisted. "They'll be searching the skies next." Harry nodded grimly. "Which direction?" "West," Elara replied, securing herself more firmly behind Harry. "I'll guide us once we're clear of the immediate area." "Hold tight," Ember warned, banking sharply westward and accelerating to his maximum speed. They had barely cleared the former boundaries of the sanctuary when Harry felt a disturbing magical sensation, like invisible hooks trying to catch them in flight. "Tracking spells," Elara called over the wind. "They're attempting to trace our magical signatures." She began complex wandless gestures, creating a shimmering barrier around them that deflected the magical tracers. The effort was visibly taxing, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air at their current altitude. "Can you maintain this while we fly to Godric's Hollow?" Harry asked worriedly. Elara shook her head. "Not for that distance. We need to break the tracking first." She scanned the landscape below. There, the standing stones at Ravenscroft. Ancient magical site. "We can use the ambient magic to disrupt their tracking." Ember followed her direction, descending toward a small circle of weathered megaliths nestled in a remote valley. As they approached, Harry could feel the magical energy emanating from the site, old power, different from the refined magic of wizards but potent in its own way. They landed in the center of the stone circle, Ember folding his wings as Elara immediately began working with the site's natural energies. Her hands moved in complex patterns, drawing sigils in the air that momentarily glowed before sinking into the ground beneath them. "This won't hold them long," she explained as she worked. "But it should confuse the tracking spells enough to give us time to reach Godric's Hollow." Harry watched her work, impressed as always by her magical knowledge. Despite years of learning from her, there were still aspects of magic Elara understood that seemed beyond conventional wizarding education. "Harry," she said suddenly, pausing in her work. "There's something important you need to understand about Godric's Hollow and your parents' legacy." Her serious tone caught his full attention. "What is it?" "The protection your mother created when she died for you, it wasn't just the blood ward that keeps you safe at the Dursleys. There was deeper magic at work, old family magic that few modern wizards understand." She glanced at Ember significantly. "Magic that might be particularly responsive to your bond with Ember." Before she could elaborate, a sharp crack echoed through the valley, the distinctive sound of apparition. Elara's head snapped up, eyes widening. "They've found us faster than I expected," she whispered. "Malfoy must have better tracking tools than standard Ministry issue." At the edge of the stone circle, 3 figures appeared: Lucius Malfoy, Dolores Umbridge, and Walden McNair. They approached cautiously, wands raised but not yet casting. "Mr. Potter," Malfoy called, his cultured voice carrying easily across the open space. "This need not become unpleasant. The Ministry simply wishes to ensure that dangerous magical creatures are properly regulated." "Liar," Harry replied flatly. "You want Ember for yourselves. You've been trying to get him for years." Beside him, Ember growled, smoke curling from his nostrils. The dragon's amber eyes were fixed on the 3 wizards, his muscles tensed for combat. Umbridge stepped forward, her girlish voice contrasting grotesquely with her toad-like appearance. Now, Mr. Potter. Is that any way to speak to your elders? We're simply enforcing the law, laws that exist for everyone's protection. Laws you manipulate for your own purposes," Elara countered, moving to stand protectively beside Harry and Ember. "This isn't official Ministry business. If it were, you'd have brought Aurors, not McNair's beast hunters." McNair smiled unpleasantly. "The Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures has its own enforcement division, Nightshade. We don't need Aurors to handle rogue beasts." "Ember isn't a rogue beast," Harry snapped, anger flaring. "He's a sentient being with rights under wizard law. Rights that Dumbledore confirmed and the Ministry acknowledged when they approved our arrangement." "Arrangements based on incomplete information," Umbridge replied sweetly. "Our recent research into Imperial Skydancer suggests they pose greater dangers than previously understood. For everyone's safety, the dragon must be relocated to a proper containment facility." Harry felt Ember's rage building through their bond, a hot, fierce emotion that mirrored his own. But beneath the dragon's anger was something else, calculated assessment. Ember was analyzing their opponents, looking for weaknesses. 3 wizards, he communicated to Harry. "Strong, but not expecting our full abilities. They want me alive and unharmed. Limits their spells." Harry gave a tiny nod, understanding the tactical advantage this created. Their opponents needed to capture rather than kill, which restricted their most dangerous options. "You have one chance to withdraw peacefully," Elara announced, her voice carrying the authority of her years as a master wandmaker. "This circle is neutral magical ground, protected by treaties older than the Ministry itself. Your unsanctioned aggressive action here violates those treaties." Malfoy's cold smile never wavered. "An interesting legal argument, Nightshade. Perhaps you can present it to the Wisengamot, after you've been arrested for harboring dangerous creatures and interfering with Ministry personnel." He raised his wand, pointing it not at Ember but at Harry. "The boy comes with us. The dragon will follow." In that moment, several things happened simultaneously. McNair and Umbridge spread out, creating a triangular formation around them. Elara's hands moved in a complex pattern, drawing power from the ancient stones. And Ember, with speed belying his massive size, whipped his tail in a powerful arc that sent a shockwave of displaced air toward Malfoy. The aristocratic wizard was caught off guard, stumbling backward as the invisible force struck him. His spell went wide, striking one of the standing stones and rebounding in a shower of sparks. Battle erupted in earnest. Umbridge and McNair began casting in coordinated patterns, nets of magical energy designed to entangle rather than harm. Elara countered with shields of her own, while simultaneously tapping into the stone circle's natural power to destabilize their opponent's footing. Harry, meanwhile, had drawn his wand and was casting with the precision Elara had drilled into him over years of training. His spells weren't the most powerful, but they were strategically placed, disrupting McNair's concentration with a perfectly timed impediment jinx, then deflecting Umbridge's binding spell back toward her with a reflected shield. Ember contributed most dramatically, using controlled bursts of flame to create barriers and limit their opponent's movement options. The dragon was careful not to cause serious injury, a restraint born not of mercy but pragmatism. As Harry had learned through their years together, killing ministry officials, however corrupt, would only make their situation worse. The skirmish continued for several minutes, a deadly dance of spells, flame, and ancient magic. Despite being outnumbered, the trio of Harry, Ember, and Elara held their own, their practiced coordination and Ember's sheer magical presence creating a formidable defense. Then Malfoy, recovering from his initial setback, changed tactics. Rather than targeting them directly, he aimed his wand at the largest standing stone and unleashed a spell that struck with the sound of cracking thunder. The ancient monolith shuddered, deep cracks spreading across its weathered surface. The magical energy that had been flowing through the stone circle fluctuated wildly, disrupting Elara's defensive network. "He's destabilizing the circle," Elara shouted. "If the keystone falls, the backlash could be catastrophic." Harry felt the magical disturbance like a physical pressure against his skin. The stone circle's power, once steady and supportive, was now chaotic, pulses of wild magic rippling outward from the damaged monolith. McNair seized the advantage, casting a specialized binding spell that wrapped around Ember's forelegs like glowing chains. The dragon roared in pain and surprise, flames erupting involuntarily from his jaws. "Ember!" Harry cried, abandoning his position to rush to his friend's side. He cast a severing charm at the magical bindings, but they resisted, seemingly impervious to standard counterspells. "Dragon-specific restraints," McNair called with cruel satisfaction. "Designed for subduing even the most magically resistant species. Your pet isn't going anywhere, Potter." Elara, meanwhile, was desperately trying to stabilize the faltering magic of the stone circle while simultaneously defending against Umbridge's increasingly aggressive spells. The strain was showing on her face, beads of sweat running down her temples as she channeled power through her wandless techniques. "Harry," she called urgently, "remember what I told you about Godric's Hollow. Your mother's protection, it responds to love and sacrifice, just like the magic that created your bond with Ember." Harry looked up from his attempts to free Ember, momentarily confused by the seemingly irrelevant reminder. Then understanding dawned. If his mother's sacrificial protection had created powerful magic that lived on in his blood, could that same power be accessed deliberately? "Harry," Ember's voice resonated in his mind, strained but determined. "Blood magic. Ancient way. Offer freely, with intent." It wasn't dark magic, Harry realized, not if freely given for protection rather than coerced for harm. With a quick decision, he pressed his wand to his palm and whispered a minor cutting charm. A thin line of red appeared across his hand. "For protection," he murmured, pressing his bleeding palm against Ember's scales. "By freely given blood and freely offered magic." The effect was immediate and spectacular. Where Harry's blood touched Ember's scales, a golden light ignited, spreading rapidly across the dragon's body. The magical chains binding Ember's legs shattered, dissolving into harmless sparks. More remarkably, the golden energy continued expanding, forming a dome of protective magic that encompassed Harry, Ember, and Elara. Within this dome, Harry felt a surge of power unlike anything he'd experienced before, warm, familiar somehow, like a distant memory of being held in loving arms. "What is this?" Umbridge shrieked, her spells dissipating harmlessly against the golden barrier. Elara's eyes were wide with wonder and scholarly fascination. "Blood protection magic, activated through the dragon bond. Extraordinary." Malfoy, however, looked furious. "Enough games," he snarled, raising his wand again. "McNair, the special containment measures. Now." The executioner nodded grimly, reaching into his robes to withdraw what appeared to be a small silver orb. "Stand back," he warned his companions. "This will disrupt all magical protections in the area, including any we've cast ourselves." "Harry," Elara said urgently, "we need to leave immediately. That's a null sphere, an illegal magical dampening device. If activated, it could temporarily sever your bond with Ember." The very thought sent a spike of panic through Harry. Their bond was so integral to who they both were now that its disruption was unthinkable. "Can we apparate out?" he asked desperately. Elara shook her head. "Not from within the stone circle while the magic is destabilized. We need to physically leave the area first." Ember, fully freed from the binding spell and reinvigorated by the blood protection, lowered himself for mounting. "Climb on. Both of you. We fly." Harry and Elara quickly scrambled onto Ember's back, securing themselves as the dragon tensed for takeoff. Outside their protective dome, McNair was activating the silver orb, which had begun to emit a pulsing gray light. "Stop them!" Umbridge screeched, casting futilely against their golden shield. Ember launched skyward with explosive force, powerful wings driving them up and away from the stone circle. Behind them, a wave of nullifying magic erupted from McNair's device, racing outward in all directions. They barely cleared its range, the edge of the effect brushing against Ember's tail scales with a sensation like cold static. "Head west," Elara directed once they were safely airborne. "Quickly, before they can summon airborne pursuit." Ember needed no further encouragement, accelerating to his maximum speed as they soared above the countryside. The golden protective energy had receded but not disappeared entirely, creating a subtle shimmer around them that deflected the tracking spells Malfoy was frantically casting from below. "That was incredible," Harry said once they'd put several miles between themselves and the stone circle. "What exactly happened back there?" "You activated protections that have been dormant in your blood since the night your parents died," Elara explained, her voice filled with scholarly excitement despite their precarious situation. "The sacrifice your mother made created a magical protection that lives on in you, protection against those who would do you harm. But it never manifested like that before," Harry pointed out. "Because you've never deliberately invoked it before, and never through the amplifying conduit of your dragon bond." Elara's eyes gleamed with the thrill of magical discovery. The text suggested Imperial Skydancers could serve as magical catalysts, enhancing and transforming other forms of magic. What we just witnessed proves those accounts correct. Harry looked down at his palm, where the small cut was already healing. Something profound had changed in that moment of connection, he could feel it through their bond. The link between him and Ember had deepened, gained new dimensions. "Blood freely given," Ember commented, his mental voice rich with satisfaction. "Ancient magic remembers the old ways. Dragon and wizard, bound by choice and sacrifice. Will it protect us from Malfoy and the others if they catch up?" Harry asked practically. "Temporarily," Elara replied. "But like all magical protections, it has limitations. The blood shield is powerful but not inexhaustible. And Malfoy has resources we can only guess at, including, potentially, dark magical artifacts that could counter even this protection." She glanced behind them, though there was no sign of pursuit yet. "We need to reach Godric's Hollow before they regroup. The protection will be strongest there, on the land where it was first created." The journey to Godric's Hollow took nearly 3 hours, even with Ember flying at his sustainable maximum speed. They avoided major towns and magical settlements, keeping to unpopulated areas where a dragon might be mistaken for a large bird at a distance. As they approached their destination, the landscape below changed to rolling countryside dotted with small villages. Elara directed them to a wooded area on the outskirts of a picturesque hamlet. "That's Godric's Hollow," she indicated as Ember began his descent. "We'll land in those trees and approach on foot. Even with our protective magic, a dragon landing in broad daylight would attract unwanted attention." They touched down in a dense copse about a half-mile from the village proper. Ember immediately set about creating a temporary resting place, using his precise flame control to clear ground cover without igniting the surrounding forest. "Will Ember be safe here while we go into the village?" Harry asked, concerned about leaving his friend vulnerable after their narrow escape. "I will be vigilant," Ember assured him. "And I can come quickly if needed. Our bond is strong enough now that distance is less limiting." "He'll be safer here than with us initially," Elara added. "I need to test the boundaries of the protection before exposing Ember to potential detection. The remains of your parents' cottage may be watched, even after all these years. With reluctance, Harry agreed to the plan. After ensuring Ember was comfortably established in a natural hollow well hidden from casual observation, he and Elara made their way toward the village. Godric's Hollow proved to be a mixed community, mostly Muggle residents but with a significant wizarding presence discreetly integrated into the village life. Elara guided Harry through back lanes, avoiding the central square where they might be more easily recognized. "There," she said softly, pointing to a small cottage at the end of a quiet lane. Or rather, what remained of a cottage. Harry's breath caught in his throat. He'd seen pictures of his parents, heard stories about their lives, but had never visited the place where they had lived, and died. The cottage was largely a ruin, the upper right portion entirely destroyed, with ivy and wild roses having claimed much of the remaining structure. Most striking was the preservation charm clearly visible to magical eyes, a spell that had maintained the cottage in its post-attack state as a memorial. A sign had risen from the ground as they approached, explaining to wizarding visitors the historical significance of the site and paying tribute to the Potter's sacrifice. Harry approached slowly, emotions he couldn't fully identify welling up inside him. Through his bond with Ember, he felt the dragon's concerned attention, ready to come to him if the emotional distress became too great. "I didn't know it was left like this," he said quietly. "I thought it would have been rebuilt or removed." "The Ministry declared it a historical site after Voldemort's fall," Elara explained. "Many wizarding families visit to pay respects. For them, this is where the war ended." Harry touched the gate cautiously. Immediately, he felt a surge of magic, not hostile but welcoming, like the house itself recognized his return. "It knows you," Elara observed. "The protection recognizes Potter blood." As if responding to her words, the preservation charm shimmered, briefly revealing the cottage as it must have once been, whole, welcoming, a real home. The vision lasted only seconds before fading back to the preserved ruin. "The protection is still active," Elara continued, her expert senses analyzing the magical signatures. "Weakened by time but remarkably resilient. And responsive to your presence." Harry pushed the gate open, feeling an increasing sense of connection as he stepped onto the property itself. The magic here was different from any he'd encountered before, not the refined enchantments of Hogwarts or the wild natural magic of Elara's sanctuary, but something deeply personal. Family magic. As they approached the damaged doorway, Harry felt a pulse through his bond with Ember, alarm, suddenly rising. "Wizards approaching," the dragon warned. "Multiple signatures. They found us." Harry turned to Elara, relaying the warning. "Ember senses pursuers. They're close." Elara's expression hardened. "Faster than I expected. They must have tracked the blood magic signature." She glanced around quickly, assessing their limited options. "Inside. The core protection will be strongest there." They hurried through the ruined doorway into what had once been the Potter's living room. Despite the preservation charm, years of exposure to the elements had left their mark: faded furnishings, weathered floorboards, the ghostly outlines of family photographs still hanging on walls open to the sky. "Can we fight them here?" Harry asked, drawing his wand. "Not directly," Elara replied. "Not against the combined force they're likely bringing. But we might not have to." She moved to the center of the room, kneeling to examine the floorboards. "If my research is correct, the Potter cottage contains something few modern wizarding homes maintain, a family wardstone." She tapped specific boards with her fingertips, murmuring detection charms. "Yes, here. Harry, place your hand here. As the last Potter, your blood should activate the family protections." Harry knelt beside her, placing his palm on the indicated floorboard. Unlike at the stone circle, he didn't need to offer blood this time, the magic recognized him immediately. The floorboard glowed with soft golden light, then shifted aside, revealing a small cavity containing a crystalline stone carved with ancient runes. "A family ward stone," Elara breathed, her scholarly fascination momentarily overriding their urgent situation. Most pureblood families removed these centuries ago when the ministry standardized home protection charms. Your father's family must have maintained the tradition. The stone pulsed with light in response to Harry's proximity, the runes illuminating in sequence. What does it do? Harry asked, fascinated despite their danger. Family ward stones create protection specific to the bloodline, Elara explained quickly. Unlike standard wards, they don't just protect a location, they protect the family itself, responding to threats against any recognized family member. Harry, Ember's mental voice was urgent. They approach the village boundary. Malfoy leads them. And someone else, someone with dark magic that smells of dead things. Harry relayed this disturbing information to Elara, whose expression grew grave. We need to activate the full protection, she decided. Harry, call Ember here. If my theory is correct, your dragon bond will amplify the family ward just as it did your mother's sacrificial protection. But Ember can't fit inside the cottage, Harry protested. He doesn't need to be inside. Just on the property, connected to you when you activate the ward stone. Elara was already making preparations, drawing protective sigils in the air that settled around them like invisible armor. Harry reached through their bond. Ember, we need you at the cottage. Come quickly, but stay low. Coming, came the immediate response. 2 minutes. Outside, the first signs of their pursuers became audible, the sharp cracks of apparition at the village boundary, followed by the subtle magical disturbance of detection spells being cast. Elara worked frantically, her wandless magic guiding Harry through the process of awakening the family ward stone. When Ember arrives, place one hand on the stone and reach through your bond with the other. The intent is key, protection for your family, which now includes Ember. Harry nodded, concentrating on the unfamiliar runes as they began to glow more intensely. Each seemed to represent different aspects of protection, boundaries, detection, concealment, defense. The approaching magical signatures grew stronger. Through the broken walls, Harry could see figures moving down the village lane toward the cottage, at least a dozen dark-robed wizards led by the now familiar forms of Malfoy, Umbridge, and McNair. They're almost here, he warned Elara, who nodded grimly. Just a few more seconds. A massive shadow passed overhead as Ember arrived, circling once before landing with surprising delicacy in what had once been the cottage's back garden. The dragon's size was even more impressive in contrast to the ruined home, his wingspan now wider than the cottage itself. I am here, he announced through their bond. What must I do? Connect with me through our bond, Harry directed, placing one hand firmly on the ward stone. Focus on protection, for all of us. As Ember concentrated, Harry felt their connection strengthening, the familiar warmth of their bond intensifying. The ward stone responded immediately, its glow brightening until the runes seemed to burn with inner fire. Outside, Malfoy's voice rang out. The property is surrounded. Come out peacefully, and no harm will come to any of you. Elara glanced at Harry, a grim smile on her face. Ready? Harry nodded, his determination solidifying. Ready. With a final gesture, Elara completed the activation sequence. Harry felt a surge of power rush through him, from the ward stone into his body, then outward through his bond with Ember. The sensation was extraordinary, like liquid fire flowing through his veins, familiar yet ancient, as if generations of potters were lending their strength to this moment. The effect manifested physically as a dome of golden energy that expanded rapidly from the ward stone, encompassing the entire property. Unlike the temporary shield they'd created at the stone circle, this protection felt permanent and immovable, a declaration that this land and these people were under the protection of ancient family magic. Outside the boundary, their pursuers reacted with alarm. Several attempted to cast spells against the barrier, only to have their magic absorbed or reflected harmlessly. Malfoy's face was contorted with fury as he barked orders, directing more concentrated magical assaults against the dome. It's working, Elara observed with satisfaction. The family ward is fully activated. They cannot breach it without magic darker than they'd dare use openly. Harry wasn't entirely relieved. How long will it hold? Indefinitely, in theory, Elara replied. Family wards draw power from the land itself and from the magical signature of family members. As long as you're here, it should maintain its strength. But we can't stay here forever, Harry pointed out. And once we leave, they'll be waiting. Elara nodded grimly. True. We've created a temporary sanctuary, not a solution. Outside the barrier, the situation was evolving. Malfoy had apparently recognized the nature of their protection and was now engaged in intense discussion with a hooded figure who had joined their group. Even from a distance, Harry could sense something wrong about this newcomer, a magical aura that felt corrupt, tainted. That one smells of death magic, Ember communicated, his mental voice tense with dislike. Dark rituals. Blood not freely given. Before Harry could process this disturbing assessment, multiple cracks of apparition sounded beyond their pursuers. New figures appeared at the far end of the lane, wizards in distinctive red robes that Harry recognized immediately. Aurors, Elara identified, her expression showing surprise and calculation. Official Ministry law enforcement. Someone must have reported the disturbance. The arrival of Aurors created immediate confusion among their attackers. Malfoy and several others quickly disapparated, clearly unwilling to be caught in what would be difficult to explain as authorized ministry business. Umbridge, however, approached the Auror group, clearly attempting to assert official authority over the situation. This is unexpected, Elara murmured, watching the confrontation carefully. But potentially fortunate. Official Auror involvement makes their unsanctioned operation much harder to justify. Should we lower the ward? Harry asked uncertainly. Talk to the Aurors. Elara shook her head firmly. Not yet. We don't know which faction of the ministry these Aurors represent. Some departments remain heavily influenced by families like the Malfoys. They watched as the situation outside evolved further. More Aurors arrived, creating a perimeter around the property. Most of Malfoy's private force had retreated, but Umbridge remained, gesticulating emphatically as she spoke with what appeared to be the Auror commander. Then, a new figure apparat directly in front of the cottage, tall, with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles that glinted in the afternoon sun. Dumbledore, Harry and Elara said simultaneously. The Hogwarts headmaster approached the barrier calmly, studying its magical construction with evident appreciation. When he reached the edge of the golden dome, he made no attempt to breach it. Instead, he simply stood waiting, hands clasped patiently before him. I believe it's safe to speak with him, Elara decided after observing Dumbledore's interaction with the Aurors. The family ward will still protect us if needed. Harry nodded in agreement. Together, they walked through the ruined cottage to its front garden, Ember following as best he could given the structural constraints. They stopped just inside the barrier, facing Dumbledore across the thin golden membrane of protection. Good afternoon, Harry, Ember, Miss Nightshade, Dumbledore greeted them pleasantly, as if meeting them for tea rather than in the midst of a magical confrontation. I must say, I'm impressed by your activation of the Potter family ward. Few wizards your age could manage such ancient magic. Professor, Harry acknowledged cautiously. How did you find us? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. The Potter family ward stone activating after all these years created quite a distinctive magical signature. As someone who placed additional protections on this property after that terrible night, I was automatically notified of its awakening. His expression grew more serious. I understand you've had a rather difficult day. Elara's sanctuary compromised, pursued by unauthorized ministry personnel, and now this rather dramatic standoff. They want to take Ember, Harry stated flatly. Malfoy, Umbridge, and McNair. They attacked us without proper authorization. So I have gathered, Dumbledore replied, glancing toward where Umbridge was still arguing vehemently with the Auror commander. Fortunately, these particular Aurors answer to Madame Bones, whose integrity is beyond question. They responded to reports of unauthorized magical combat in a Muggle area, not to any official directive regarding your dragon. Elara stepped forward. Can you ensure our safety if we lower the ward, Headmaster? Lucius Malfoy has considerable influence, even if he's momentarily retreated. I believe I can, Dumbledore replied confidently. Your timing is rather fortuitous, in fact. In exactly 3 days, Harry's official Hogwarts letter will be sent, making him formally a student under my protection. Additionally, the recent unsanctioned operation against your sanctuary has raised serious questions in the Wisengamot about potential abuses of power. He gestured toward the Aurors. Madame Bones has already begun an investigation into the authorization of today's actions. Preliminary findings suggest neither Minister Fudge nor the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures officially sanctioned this operation. Harry exchanged a glance with Elara and Ember, cautious optimism rising. If Dumbledore was correct, their pursuers had overplayed their hand, acting without proper authority in a way that exposed their personal agenda. What about Ember? Harry asked, the most important question foremost in his mind. They still want to take him away. As I've maintained from the beginning, Dumbledore replied, your bond with Ember constitutes a familiar relationship of unprecedented magical significance. Under educational statutes that predate the ministry itself, such bonds cannot be severed without causing potentially catastrophic magical consequences. He smiled slightly. The research you and Elara have conducted over these years has proven invaluable in documenting this fact. The records you've kept of your bond's development create a legal foundation that even Lucius Malfoy will find difficult to circumvent. Elara's expression showed cautious relief. Then our work wasn't in vain. The documentation of the Imperial Skydancer revival is now safely duplicated in multiple secure locations, Dumbledore confirmed. Including, I might add, the Department of Mysteries, where certain researchers have taken great interest in your findings. Interest that provides additional political protection against those who might wish to interfere. After further discussion and careful assessment of the situation outside, Harry, Elara, and Ember collectively decided to lower the family ward. The process was simpler than activation. Harry simply needed to express the intent to temporarily deactivate rather than remove the protection. As the golden dome faded, Dumbledore stepped forward to meet them, creating his own subtle protective magic around their group, less visible than the family ward but clearly powerful in its own right. The Auror commander approached, a stern-faced witch with a monocle who Dumbledore addressed as Madame Bones. After confirming their identities, she requested brief statements regarding the day's events, which Elara provided with diplomatic precision. Unauthorized pursuit and attempted capture of a registered familiar constitutes a serious breach of magical law, Madame Bones noted, her monocle glinting as she observed Ember with professional interest rather than fear. Particularly when the familiar in question is bonded to a minor wizard under educational protection statutes. She turned to Dumbledore. I'll need formal statements from all parties, of course, but preliminary evidence suggests clear violations of protocol by Dolores Umbridge and her associates. Minister Fudge will be most displeased to learn of actions taken in the ministry's name without proper authorization. Umbridge, who had been forcibly contained by Aurors nearby, looked apoplectic but powerless, a state Harry found deeply satisfying after years of her interference. What happens now? Harry asked, still wary despite the apparent shift in their favor. Now, Dumbledore replied, we ensure your safe transition to Hogwarts. Your early admission has already been processed, the events of today merely accelerate our timeline slightly. He glanced at Ember, who was watching the proceedings with alert interest. Arrangements for Ember's accommodation at Hogwarts have been finalized. The renovated structure near the Forbidden Forest should provide ample space for a dragon of his impressive proportions, with direct access to suitable flying areas. And my research? Elara inquired. The sanctuary's records will be transferred to Hogwarts for safekeeping, Dumbledore assured her. Additionally, I believe we can arrange visiting scholar status for you, Miss Nightshade. Your expertise regarding Imperial Skydancers remains unmatched, after all. As the immediate crisis diffused, the logistics of transition were quickly arranged. The Aurors established a protective perimeter while Harry, Ember, and Elara prepared for transport to Hogwarts. Special magical conveyance was required for Ember, whose size now made conventional transportation methods impractical. Before departing, Harry took a moment alone in the ruins of his parents' cottage. Standing where they had once lived, he felt a connection to them stronger than any he'd experienced before. The family magic still hummed softly in the air, responsive to his presence. They would be proud, Ember commented gently through their bond. The female especially, your mother. Her magic still protects you, even now. Harry nodded, placing his hand one last time on the wall of the home he'd never known. We'll come back, he promised quietly. Properly restore it someday. Outside, final preparations were complete. As Harry emerged from the cottage, he found Dumbledore waiting, a gentle expression on his aged face. Your parents would indeed be proud, Harry, the headmaster said, echoing Ember's sentiment. Not just of your magical accomplishments, impressive though they are, but of the young man you're becoming. Courageous, loyal, and willing to stand firm against intimidation. He glanced at Ember, who had positioned himself protectively behind Harry. Your bond with Ember represents something quite remarkable, not merely in magical terms, but in what it reveals about your character. The Imperial Skydancers of old were said to choose companions of exceptional spiritual quality, not merely magical power. As they prepared to depart Godric's Hollow, Harry couldn't help asking one final question that had been bothering him. Professor, why did Malfoy and the others want Ember so badly? What were they really after? Dumbledore's expression turned grave. A question with complex answers, Harry. The simplest is that Imperial Skydancers possess magical properties found in no other creature, properties valuable to those with certain ambitions. You mean Voldemort, Harry stated directly. They think he's still out there somewhere, don't they? And they want Ember for something related to him. The headmaster studied Harry thoughtfully before responding. Your insight serves you well. There are indeed those who believe Lord Voldemort's defeat was temporary rather than permanent. The unique properties of Imperial Skydancer blood, particularly its reputed restorative capabilities, would be of great interest to anyone seeking to restore a weakened dark wizard to power. Harry felt a chill despite the warm summer day. So this isn't over. Even with Umbridge discredited and Malfoy exposed. The greater conflict? No, Harry, I fear not, Dumbledore admitted. But today represents a significant victory nonetheless. You and Ember have demonstrated the strength of your bond, activated ancient protections, and brought questionable ministry operations into the light of public scrutiny. He placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. More importantly, you've both survived and grown stronger. The path ahead holds challenges, certainly, but you faced them better prepared than I could have hoped. As they departed Godric's Hollow, Harry and Elara by special port key, Ember escorted by magical specialists using a flying platform designed for dragon transport, Harry felt an odd mixture of emotions. Relief at their narrow escape, lingering concern about future threats, but primarily a sense of forward momentum. The next chapter of their journey was beginning, formal magical education at Hogwarts, new allies and challenges, and the continuing development of his unprecedented bond with Ember. Whatever came next, they would face it as they had faced everything since that first miraculous hatching under the stairs. Together. Epilogue Platform 9 3/4 bustled with the familiar chaos of September 1st, students boarding the Hogwarts Express, parents giving last-minute instructions, owls hooting indignantly in their cages. Steam billowed around the Scarlet engine as it prepared for departure. Among the crowd, Harry Potter stood out not for his famous scar, but for the unusual calm he projected amid the frenzy. At 11, he carried himself with confidence rare for his age, the result of experiences few could imagine and a bond fewer still could understand. Remember to write at least weekly, Elara instructed, adjusting Harry's already straight collar in a rare display of maternal fussing. And the communication crystal works in both directions, use it if anything unusual occurs. I will, Harry promised, smiling at her concern. But with Ember already settled at Hogwarts and Dumbledore expecting me, I think this will be the most normal journey I've had in years. Elara raised a skeptical eyebrow. Normal is relative, particularly for a Potter with an Imperial Skydancer familiar. Just be vigilant. Not all threats announce themselves with dramatic pursuits and magical combat. Harry nodded, appreciating her caution even as excitement bubbled within him. Despite his early exposure to Hogwarts 2 years earlier, this formal beginning, joining his age peers, participating in the sorting ceremony, starting proper classes, represented a milestone he'd been anticipating for months. Through his bond with Ember, he felt the dragon's distant excitement mirroring his own. Already settled in his special enclosure near the Forbidden Forest, Ember was eagerly awaiting Harry's arrival, sending occasional images of the castle from his unique aerial perspective. The whistle blew, signaling 5 minutes until departure. Around them, families intensified their goodbyes, creating a cacophony of last-minute advice and emotional farewells. "Go on then," Elara said, her usual composure returning. "Find a compartment before they're all taken. And remember, blend in, make friends, don't show off," Harry finished with a grin. "I remember." It was advice they discussed extensively. Despite his advanced magical training and unique experiences, Harry needed to integrate with his peers, to experience the normal aspects of wizarding education that his unusual circumstances had partially bypassed. With a final quick hug that still seemed slightly awkward for the normally reserved wand maker, Elara stepped back. "Off you go then. And Harry, enjoy yourself. You've earned it." Harry boarded the train, finding an empty compartment near the middle. As he settled by the window, he spotted a family of redheads rushing toward the platform, parents with several children, including a boy who appeared to be Harry's age. The sight reminded Harry of the new experiences awaiting him: friendships, classes, house rivalries, and all the traditional elements of Hogwarts life he'd only observed peripherally during his brief early enrollment. "Excited?" Ember's voice resonated through their bond, clear despite the distance. "Nervous too," Harry admitted privately. "It's strange, I've faced Malfoy, Umbridge, and Rogue Ministry officials, but the thought of making friends with kids my own age is somehow more intimidating." Ember's mental laughter warned him. "Small humans are complicated. But you will find your flight mates. Those worthy of trust." The train whistle sounded again as the final boarding call was announced. Through the window, Harry watched Elara step back from the platform, her silver-streaked hair distinctive among the crowd of parents. She raised her hand in a final farewell as the train began to move, gradually picking up speed. "We begin a new chapter," Ember observed philosophically. "But our story remains our own." Harry smiled, leaning back in his seat as countryside began to replace urban landscape outside the window. After years of hiding, fighting, and surviving, they were finally moving toward a future with more options than constraints. Whatever that future held, new friends or old enemies, magical discoveries or political challenges, the foundation of everything remained unchanged: the miraculous bond between a boy and a dragon that had begun in the unlikeliest of places, a cupboard under the stairs. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.